Like, I don't typically commit crimes, but when I do, it's bank fraud.
Thanks so much, brother, for coming out. True crime author of 8 books. You also podcast host for Matt Cox. Oh, you're good. Crack it open. Of Inside True Crime. Is that correct?
The podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a podcast and on a website where I put like stories that I've written. It's like InsideTrueCrime.com, and then the YouTube channel. Actually, nobody looks up Inside True Crime. They look up Matt Cox or Matthew Cox. You look on the analytics and you're like, that was just stupid. Like, nobody's looking up Inside True Crime.
So give a little bit of your story to the listeners and who's tuning in on your background and how you came to where you're at now.
The quick version of my story is that I basically have a learning disability, and ended up getting a degree in fine arts, right? So I end up becoming a mortgage broker.
Okay. Well, you got your fine arts from was it
USF?
USF. Okay.
So I'm not even sure how that happened. Like, barely graduated high school, but I did manage to graduate. It was like almost straight A's but it was a fine arts degree. So anyway, so I did well in that. I got out, but of course, that's really at that point I was, this is pre-internet, right? So I'm not capable of making a living as an artist at that point.
Right.
So what I did was I worked construction for a little bit, and then I eventually had a girlfriend that got me into being a mortgage broker, became a mortgage broker, and did very well at it. But very quickly was committing fraud, and I worked for a company that, I don't want to say they did kind of encourage it. They did. Well, at least, I don't know if the company would say company, but at least my manager encouraged it. And other people that were there were encouraging it. Like, you change a W-2, you change you white something out, so it goes through underwriting. The person gets the loan and I can make $3,500 out as a broker. Well, I did that and very quickly started doing very well. And now my fine arts degree came in pretty convenient. So now I'm getting more and more creative, right? Like,
okay.
And I'm realizing if this person doesn't have a job, even I just make the W-2s and pay stubs as long as they can call underwriting and call a phone number, and that phone number is in the business directory and someone answers it, then they'll verify the W-2s and pay stubs and this person gets a loan. So I'm making employment websites. I'm making getting phone numbers. I've got 6 phones on my credenza behind my desk and I'm answering them, or I'm having somebody answer them, or, I'm making fake. I very quickly start making fake bank websites. So if you, maybe you're buying a house and the seller, let's say you've got 90%, you've got a 90% loan.
Okay.
So you can buy a house, let's say for $100,000, but the guy would sell it for 90, but you don't have a down payment. You got a 90% loan. So he only wants 90. So you say, I'll buy it for 100 and I'm going to get the seller to pay the 10% down payment. You don't have it, but I can get you a 90% loan and he'll take 90. So, but I have to prove that money's in the bank. So I can't prove it. You don't have the money in the bank. So here's what I do is I make a fake bank website. I make fake bank statements. I make it look like you've had the money in the bank for 3 months. I make in color fake bank bank statements. We send those to the underwriter. And if they want, they can call and verify the bank, and I or someone will answer the phone and verify it, that the money's there. The bank doesn't even exist. And then the seller brings the $10,000 to closing, which he immediately gets back. So instead of getting 90 for it, his house, he gets 100, but 10 of it was his money, and you get the house. So that person makes the payments. Everything's fine. I make a $3,500 broker fee or whatever the broker fee was.
Right.
So I start doing these types of things very, very, getting more and more creative to the point where it's like, if someone just walked in the door, like they're getting a loan, like I can get anybody a loan at this point.
How did you balance all that shit out? Like, how did you keep your mind sane? Like, did you have it all like?
Well, you're only working on maybe 5, 6, 7 files at a time, right? So they're only closing. So, and they're all, I'm pretty organized, I'm organized. I know who's who. And so probably within a year and a half, I opened my own business. I hire about 12 guys.
Okay.
And now they're all doing, they're all committing fraud. And so very quickly, millions of dollars in fraudulent loans are going through, and we're making great money because if you come in my door, you've already been turned down 3 or 4 places. You can't complain when I say your interest rate is, back then it would be I might tell your interest rate is 9-10%. Now, obviously now that rate would be 7%, 6%. It's still 2 or 3 or 4 points over prime.
Right.
And what are you going to say? So I'm jacking up your interest rate. I'm getting money on the back end of the loan. So I'm getting a couple thousand on the back end of the loan. I'm getting 4,000 or 5,000 in the front end of the loan. You can't say anything. I mean, keep renting. If you're not happy about it, keep renting.
Right.
So, so we do that. We've got a bunch of loans going through. Everything's great. I end up losing my license for good reason. So I get placed on probation. I sell the company to a guy who's paying me to kind of basically keep running it. I'm just not in the office anymore. And so I start committing more and more egregious frauds. I start making fake people. I start manufacturing synthetic identities. I go to Social Security. I eventually figure out how to get Social Security to issue me Social Security numbers to children that don't exist.
Okay.
I make a fake birth certificate for like a 10-month-old child. And then I make a fake shot record. And then I go into Social Security and I say, my son was born. He's 10 months old. He was never had a Social Security number issued. And then they go on the system, they look, and it's a real person. He's got a birth certificate. He's got a shot record. So he's a real kid. But you're right. He doesn't have a Social Security number issued. My gosh, we'll order one right now. So I get a Social Security number. I get social secured credit cards in his name, build up his credit.
Okay.
6 months later, he's got 700 plus credit scores. And obviously I can make him W-2s, pay stubs. I can verify his rental history. I can verify his bank account.
Now, they can't cross-check like a Social Security number with a credit report, like for real age and stuff like that.
So the way it works is the first time that the credit bureau heard about you was when you applied for something.
Okay.
So the first time someone applies for something, one, as long as that Social Security number isn't already in their database, which it's not, I just got it issued.
Gotcha.
So they just, and I'm not saying that the kid's 10 months old. I'm saying he's a 35-year-old man.
Right.
32-year-old man. So here's his, he was born on 7/7, like July 7th. And almost all these guys were born on July 7th, 1970, like 7/7. I don't have to remember much. So he's born, he's 30 at that point, let's say 32 years old. This is his Social Security number. This is his address. This is where he works. So the credit bureau hasn't heard of this person. They don't know who he is. But so they say no credit profile found. So obviously you get denied when you apply.
Right.
You applied for a Bank of America card and they said, oh, no, we don't know who this person is. But the next time you go to pull his credit, they go, oh, he exists. This is a real person, but he doesn't have any credit. So you know what you can do? You can get him we can't give you a credit card, but we can give you a secured credit card. Oh, great. Here's $500. Get me the card. So I get 3 secured credit cards. I build up their credit history. And in 6 months, they've got 700 credit scores.
Damn.
So now I've got a guy with 700 credit scores. I've got a bank for him. I got employment for him. I can prove his residency. He's perfect, right? So he can easily, you only needed at that time a 620 credit score to get 95% financing. You need 3 trade lines and over a 620 credit score. And you need to be on your job for 2 years, which he was. You need to have residency for 2 years, which I can prove. And you need your down payment in the bank, which I can prove also. Although eventually I just started going into the DMV and getting I would get an ID in the guy's name issued from like the state DMV, and I just go open bank accounts.
Okay.
So, and then you put some money in there slowly, and then you've got $100,000 sitting in the bank. So at any time I need to pull money out and put $20,000 on a house or $50,000 as down payment, I have it. So what I did was I went into an area of Tampa called Ybor City.
Yep, I've been there.
And I started buying houses. And back then you could buy a shithole for $50,000. Yeah. Right now it needs $25,000, $30,000 worth of work. Now that same house probably sells for $150,000 and it needs $60,000 in work. But back then I'm buying it for $50,000 and you would have to renovate it for $25,000. And then you might be able to sell it for $100,000.
Okay. But
what I did was I realized I was like, I wanted to renovate houses and sell them, but people in those areas they can't always afford the houses, And so that's why I created the synthetic identities. I thought I'll just buy the houses, sell them to people I know, sell them to these synthetic identities and, rent them out. And that's how it started, kind of almost innocently. But listen, I think that lasted all of about a week. And
Really?
then because then I started thinking, well, why even renovate these places? Like, why not just clean up the outside? I don't know. Why would I spend 25 or 30,000? Why wouldn't I just spend 10?
Right.
Clean up the outside, get an appraisal, refinance it, make the payments. Then I can make 40 grand. And I thought, 40 grand, it's not worth 40 grand. I thought, well, if each guy buys 5 of them, I thought, still, what are you making? 200 grand. Then you got to make payments for 6 months. Then I could stop paying, let them go into foreclosure. And I thought, if I could get these things to appraise higher, then I could really make some money. And I went, and I was dating a chick that worked at a title company. And so I went to her and I said, listen, I want to be able to record the value of these houses, the sales of these houses. And she's like, oh, all you got to do is this. You pay the extra doc stamps. You take the form when you fill it out, you change these numbers and you pay the extra doc stamps. You pay an extra, you buy it for 50. So you pay an extra, if you want to record it at 150, you pay an extra 700. If you want to record it at 200, you pay
really
1150. And I was like, yeah, let's record the sale of this property.
And it jumped it that high.
200,000. Well, it looks like I purchased the property in the name of James Red for $200,000, even though I bought it for 50. So what I did was, and I remember she was like, yeah, nobody's going to believe that house is worth 200,000. She's like, the other houses in the area are going for 100,000. I went, oh, I do enough of them, they'll believe it.
Right.
And I clean them up on the outside. And then she was like, well, what if they review the appraisal? If I clean them up on the outside, they're never going to go in. They'll drive by. They do call it a drive-by appraisal.
Mm-hmm.
They'll drive by it to verify that what I'm telling them is true, because I'll have an appraisal. And so, and eventually I ended up getting the appraisal software.
Was that like curb appeal or something like that?
No, they just try. They check everything in the appraisal you gave them, but they're not going to go in, because if they go in, then you got to pay them $400.
Gotcha.
But for 150, I'll check the appraisal you have, make sure all the comparable sales are correct. So what I did was I started buying houses for 50, 60 grand, recording them for 200, 250, 190, 230. So I bought, and then I'd refinance them.
Okay.
So let's say James Red owns 5 houses that are all worth roughly $200,000, and I refinance them and get a 90% loan on each one. That's $180,000 on a house that I bought for 50 and put 10 into. So you remove 60 out of 180. Mm-hmm. I just made 120,000. Let's assume I make 6 months payments. I still get 100 grand minimum. So, that's what I did. I mean, I just started buying these houses and I started creating different synthetic identities. I created a guy named, one was James Red, one was Lee Black, Michael White, Brandon Green, David Silver. So they were all like the names of, silver, black, green, red. So, there was a movie called Reservoir Dogs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I had Mr. Pink, Mr. Black, so I thought that was cute. Right. So I did that. And the whole area shot up through the roof. The median price in that area was roughly 100 to 150,000. And it jumped up to like $250,000, $300,000. Cause I bought, FBI said I did 109 houses in 18 months, but that's not true. I know that's not true. And I could never have done that. I don't remember 109. I think they threw in a bunch of other stuff, but let's say whatever. Let's say it's 70, 80, 90. And obviously I had help. People were helping me. Everybody's making money. The appraisers are making money. Brokers are making money. Title people. I had a couple business partners who were, they were banking. Well, eventually the FBI, somebody got arrested and he cooperated, and they put together a task force, the local counties, and then they handed the task force over to the FBI. And a friend of mine who's a sheriff's deputy had dated somebody that worked on the task force, and she came to him and she said, look, your name came up and your buddy Matt Cox is about to be arrested. So he comes in and tells me, look, this is what just happened. I was like, oh shit. So I take off on the run. I go to Atlanta, I took off. I had like 80 grand. Like, you have to think I left everything. I just took off. And so I only had about 80 grand in cash. And that's just not, if you're on the run, like you can't live on 80 grand on cash. You can't live on 80 grand for long, because I have nothing. I have an Audi that's very quickly they're going to be looking for. So I immediately go to Atlanta. I rent a house. I satisfy the mortgage on the house.
What is that?
What's a mortgage?
No, how'd you satisfy it?
Oh, well, in public records, like let's say you live in a house that's worth 300,000.
Okay.
So, and you have a loan from Bank of America. You didn't put 300 grand down. Like most houses don't have. Back then, about 90% of American houses had mortgages. Now I think it's like 70. But if you got a $300,000 house, you probably put 10% down. Mm-hmm. You probably still owe $270,000 to Bank of America. Well, when you pay that off, Bank of America lets public records know by creating what's called a satisfaction of mortgage. It's like a one-page document.
Okay.
And it just says like the vice president of Bank of America, regional, whatever, signed this form saying that this mortgage is hereby satisfied. Like you paid it off.
Okay.
And then they mail it to public records. They record it. And so anybody looking on your title, under the title, they'll see your warranty deed, like you own it. Then they'll see, oh, he had a mortgage with Bank of America. Oh, he paid it off. So if an abstractor goes out and looks at that, they're going to write up a title document that says you own the house free and clear. There's no mortgages on it. So when I go and rent this guy Michael Shanahan's house, mm-hmm. I then go to Fulton County. I pull up his. Now you don't have to go down there. You could do it sitting in Starbucks,
right?
With your laptop or your cell phone. But I actually had to go down there, pulled up the title, saw he had 2 mortgages actually with Bank of America.
Okay.
I always use Bank of America, but he actually had 2 with Bank of America. And I pulled them. I created 2 satisfaction of mortgages from Bank of America, and then I recorded them. And so, when they showed up in public records, his house is now free and clear. Now, keep in mind, Bank of America still knows he owes them. They don't know that this has been done. So as long as he's still paying, they're not going to find out. So he's still paying. I'm paying him his rent. The thing is by this point, I had created a fake identity in the name Michael Shanahan. So now I'm Michael Shanahan living in Michael Shanahan's house. He's owned it 10 years. It's worth 200 grand. And I then go out and I get 3 hard money lenders to come out. That's basically guys that lend money on houses to people that don't have good credit.
Gotcha.
Or someone who wants to renovate their house, they do rehabs and stuff. Mm-hmm. So these 3 guys come out different times. They don't know about each other. They come out, they look at the house and they go, yeah, it's worth about 200,000. I'm like, oh, well, what will you lend me on? They'll go, I'll let you borrow 150,000. So I close within a few days on each one of those for 150 a piece. I end up getting around 400 and change. So I pocket that money, I put that money into banks. I pull the money out, get that money. And then I take off. I then go to South Carolina. I borrow $1.3 million on a few houses in the name of a homeless guy. So by this point, I stopped doing the synthetic identities. I start doing homeless people. I start surveying homeless people, taking their information, getting a driver's license or driver's license or an ID in their name.
How do you survey homeless people?
You just go out and I made a little badge that said my name was Matthew Cox, it was a fake name. It was whatever, John Smith. And it had my picture. It had my mugshot on it. So I pulled it all offline. So it said I work for the Salvation Army, and I had made a what I called a statistical survey form. And I had a little clipboard, and I walked around and said, hey, I work for the Salvation Army. I'm taking a survey right now. And they go, oh, I'm not interested. And I go, well, look, it pays $20 cash right now.
Oh,
you're going to give me $20 right now, cash. Yeah, right now. And I show them a little bit of money, and they go, yeah. I got 17 questions. Well, what do you need to know? And I go, name, date of birth, social security number, mother's maiden name, what county and state were you born in? Have you ever had did you have a valid driver's license? In what states have you had ID? Have you ever had a passport? You ever been in the military? Do you receive social security disability? Do you receive social security income? Do you receive any type of benefit from the state, county, from the county, state, or federal government? Do you boom, 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 boom? And then the last few questions were like, how was the last time you were gainfully employed? Do you expect to be gainfully employed within the next year? And of course, usually it's like, I haven't had a job in like 10 years or 5 years, whatever. And do you expect to be employed? And they're like, man, I'm not getting a job. Like, no, like they've got alcohol problems. They have mental illnesses. Like they're not, no. And then, so that's what I was doing. And I would get their information. Then I'd go online and I would order their copy of their birth certificate. So I'd get a certified copy of their birth certificate. You have to mail off they'd want like a copy of your driver's license. Well, I don't have a driver's license. So I'd make a driver's license, a fake one, and you make a copy that it looks like you made a copy of it.
Right.
It's really just a bullshit, Photoshop. So, and I mail that off. Well, the person at the statistical office for whatever it's called, vital statistics, they just get a copy of a birth. Like, they don't know that this isn't a real driver's license. They look at it, they get their $30 to get a certified copy. The guy, I filled out the form correctly. Mother's maiden name's right.
Mm-hmm.
Hospital, where he was born, everything's right. They send me a copy of the birth certificate. I get a copy of your social security card. I register to vote as you. I get a copy of your driving record from the other state where it's probably suspended. I then go into another state and I say, hey, just moved to the area, lost my driver's license. I need a driver's license. I give them all that and they are like, okay, stand over there. Back then it was like $20. Now it's like 50. Yeah. So they're like, stand over there, and you stand over there and you get your picture taken. And 5 minutes later, they call your name and you got yourself a nice, warm little, driver's license or ID. And you can open up bank accounts. And then I go buy houses. So I borrowed 1.3 in South Carolina, Columbia. I was pulling money out. I got about $600,000 or $700,000 out of the bank. I got handcuffed. I always say arrested, but I think they were detaining me, but they handcuffed me and questioned me. The local cops or sheriffs grabbed me, and then a detective came and he questioned me. He said, hey, Wachovia, which was the name of the bank. I don't think they're around anymore, but they were like, Wachovia Bank said, you're committing a fraud. You've got a bunch of mortgages on this loan or on this property. And so over the course of about 10 minutes, I convinced the detective while the head of Wachovia's fraud department's on the phone. I convinced the detective that they made a mistake, that their loan officers have probably committed some kind of a fraud, but I certainly did not. He allows me to go downtown, fill out a police report, and he lets me go. And I go to 2 more banks, pull out more money, and then I jump on the interstate.
You went and filed a report.
I went with him. He said, you need to come downtown and fill out a police report. I said, absolutely. Like, I'm appalled. You would accuse me,
you upright citizen.
My God.
Oh, shit.
The gall. I'm suing Wachovia. This is ridiculous. So anyway, so yeah, I didn't really act offended. I did what I call my golly gee whiz, golly gee whiz officer. I wouldn't know how to do anything like this. And he was like, no, I understand. I think they've got a problem at the bank. I'm like, yeah, it sounds like that. So he lets me go, and I take off. I go to Nashville. I start this whole thing all over again. Like I start buying a bunch of houses. By
this time, this is what, your 3rd state, 4th state?
For what? Like
you've jumped around to doing this.
Oh, I've done it in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. Make sure I don't say anything where I wasn't charged. No, I'm just joking. And Tennessee. No,
okay.
No, but I've had driver's licenses in North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas. Like I've had tons of, and I've had like almost, it's like 22, I think, 22 passports issued to me in different people's name. I've had like 27 driver's licenses.
Damn.
Because if you get a driver's license, it's just as easy to go ahead and get a passport. Like, why wouldn't you?
Right.
So, and I want it, and you have to think that if I get grabbed, and let's say a cop's going through your car or something, I want him to find as much stuff that says I'm who I'm supposed to be,
right,
as possible. You've heard the term pocket lint.
Yeah.
So it's something that if they search your pockets, like they're finding normal things that an average person would have. Like you don't want them patting you down, pulling out another driver's license in another name.
Right.
You want them to find everything in his wallet says this is who he is. And look, he's got a receipt in the name of the guy he says he is. We searched his car. Everything's in the name of the guy he says he is. There's a pay stub in the name of the person he says he is. Like, this is the guy.
Okay.
So they get to a point where they're just like, this is him. What are we doing? So yeah, so I end up going to Nashville, Tennessee. I do the same thing all over again. And I bought 20 or some odd houses. I jack up the area, jack up the prices. I borrow like $3.5 million. And I end up, I'm living with some chick. And by this point, there's been probably 50 or 60 newspaper articles about me. But, the internet is still kind of in its infancy, right? Like this is 2003, 2002, 2003 by this point. I'm not worried. And I'd been in a few local news, like when I would do something like this, like it would make the local news, but okay, so what? There's a local news station in Atlanta running running a story, a 3-minute story on me. I don't live in Atlanta anymore. I'm gone. Or
Right.
maybe it's somewhere in Colombia, or now maybe, so it's not a big deal. Well, I end up borrowing a bunch of money, and I know there's a lot of activity. I know the FBI's after me. I know the Secret Service is after me. I know the U.S. Marshals are after me because I've called home a few times, and they're like, oh, it's been 3 years. And guys are like, oh yeah, they've come by multiple times. They're definitely looking for you. And everybody in my old mortgage company, they've all been questioned. They're all cooperating.
Mhm.
So, all I can think of is I'm going to end up going to prison, like if I get caught. So we end up finding out, the girl I was dating ends up finding out that Dateline NBC News is about to do like a 1-hour special on me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so, that's a national news. And so, I had been in like Forbes magazine, or I'm sorry, Fortune magazine, and a bunch of newspapers all over the place. Like the Chicago Tribune ran a whole series on me. I've never been to Chicago. So it's out there. Anyway, I said, well, if Dateline comes out, people are going to see it. I'm not even concerned about, like, you can dodge the first day. You could get up and move and go sit someplace in a hotel for a week. Big deal. It ran once. I've moved completely. I'm in a new location, a new city somewhere in Florida. I'm good. It wasn't that worried me. What worried me was that Dateline, that I moved, I reestablished myself, and 3 years later, the rerun comes on. And some guy that serves me coffee every day is at home at 2 a.m. or 9 o'clock, and he looks up and he's like,
I know that guy.
That's John Smith.
Right.
He comes in every day and orders a venti vanilla latte. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And next thing I know, I walk in the next day and it's over. So I was like, I gotta leave the country. And I'd done it. Listen, I'd done a ton of stuff. I'd had a nose job. I had 2 hair transplants. I had a facelift. I had a liposuction. Like I had my teeth done. I mean, I did as much as I could think of, but in the end, it's still you.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's, you can say, yeah, you definitely look different. Would you recognize me in a lineup? Of course. It's still you. People are like, you've seen these celebrities. You look at them and you're like, yeah, he had a little work done, but it's still Brad Pitt.
Right.
And that's what people, you reconstruct your face. Like, what am I going to do, bro? You can't change that much.
Right.
So, I'd altered it, and there are numerous times I've been grabbed. People thought they recognized me. I've got all those stories, but I just thought, I got to leave. So the chick I was dating, we were going to go to Australia, because Australia at the time had a policy. They were trying to grow their population. It was stagnant.
Okay.
And if you went, they had different way. Like one of the things was, if you came with a certain, in a certain job field, they were giving you like 3 years tax free.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, they were being very aggressive trying to get people to come to Australia. Well, one of the things was, they were like, you can come to Australia if you come here with, and I don't know what it was, whether it was 100,000 or 200,000, but like if you show up with 200 grand and a business plan, you can come to Australia. You could get a driver's license. You can buy property. You can open a business. You can hire Aussies. You can't vote. You're not a citizen. You can't vote. You become a permanent resident alien. And they do not run your fingerprints. That's the problem with, like, if I went to Australia and because there were places I was thinking, I'm going to go and become a citizen.
Okay.
But every time you realize, one of the things they do is they run your fingerprints and they send them to the FBI. I can't have that done. But as a permanent resident alien in Australia, they didn't do it. So the chick and I were like, this is definitely it. And I'm going there with somebody who's got like a couple misdemeanors. I had a passport and a guy, Walter Holcomb, who'd never been arrested. He's a homeless guy that by the looks of him, may be dead in a few years. So how great would it be to go to Australia, become a permanent resident alien? United States is going to notify them that this guy died 5 or 10 years, later.
Right.
So I stay there. I'm good. I open a business. I hire some Aussies, and I'm going to show up with like a couple $1 million. So they're going to be like waiting with open arms. So anyway, the point is, my girlfriend at the time confided in a friend of ours who I was, And we were in the process of refinancing a bunch of houses, pulling out money. That friend contacted the Secret Service. And so she turned me in for like 10 grand. 10 grand. Like I'd have given her $1 million for a 10-minute head start. Like you can still call them. I can't trust you not to, but I'll, give me anything. But she didn't. She called. They sat on my house. One day I come home, bam, they arrest me. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's the gist of it is they arrest me. I get arrested in Nashville, Tennessee. They bring me back to Atlanta. They consolidated all my cases in Atlanta. I was indicted in Nashville, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. So they consolidated them all. I ended up going in and I ended up getting 26 years.
What was the original? I heard something. How much time were they looking to honestly give you?
So I've heard, and there's newspaper articles that say it's like 150 years.
Right.
But it's if they, what do they call it? All the prison guys call it, not stacking. They call it like running a train. Like if you stack them, it's stacking. If they run a train on you,
right?
Which has got two connotations, right? So it's like if they do that, then it could be up to, because if you just added to the maximum of all the charges, it's like 150. But if you say, okay, well, guess what? We're just going to run not the repetitive charges, just the basic charges of bank fraud, wire fraud. You start adding those up, it's still 54.
Okay.
So it's like technically, if you plead guilty, they will not charge you with 10 counts of fraud or of wire fraud.
Once they got you, did you cooperate right away, or did you fight a little bit? Or
I put up a fucking fight. I was ready to talk to them in the car, like
really?
Break out, like let's start talking, bro. Like I already know I don't want to do any time, or I don't want to do. I always loved that. You didn't want to do your time. I still did 13 years. I got cooperation. I did 13 years. Like there was no chance I wasn't going to do a chunk of time.
Right.
But I had in my mind I was going to do 10 or 15 years. And I thought if I cooperate, I might be able to be out of here in 5 or 6 years, something like that. And my lawyer, when I got my lawyer, she was saying the same thing. Like, look, she's like, I can get him to drop the money laundering. I can get him to drop this. I can get him to run these all at the same time. You're still looking at, you're looking at 10 or 15 years. And then if you cooperate, you might be out of here in 5 or 6 years. And I was like, okay, great. Well, the prosecution had a different, they had a different way of looking.
They want to run that train on you,
baby.
Yeah.
They ended up giving me 20. I got 26 years.
Okay.
And she was still, even though my PSI was saying 26 years, my pre-sentence report saying 26 years, they were saying we're going to recommend 26 years. My lawyer was like, look, some of these there's enhancements. She's like, I'm going to argue in front of the judge and I'm going to win these enhancements. You're still going to end up with like 12, 13 years. And I was like, she's like, and you've got cooperation coming. Okay, great. Well, she didn't win any of those in front of the judge. Judge was, disagree. Done. Every time he was like, I disagree. It was another like 5 years, 6 years, 2 years, 7 years. I was like, fuck, I'm 26 years. Yeah. So I get to 26 years. And they'd asked me to be interviewed by Dateline. Mm-hmm. Even though Dateline had already come out without me, Dateline came back and said, wow, they caught him. We want to interview him. So the prosecution, the U.S. attorney asked me to be interviewed again with them. Okay. So I was interviewed. I also was interviewed by a program called American Greed.
Yep. I've seen that.
So I was interviewed by American Greed. Then I go to prison. Well, actually, I was in prison when I was interviewed by American Greed too, but I was in prison, and so they never gave me anything for that. They said they would, but they didn't because they lie. So, I'm not sure that I should be, deserve to be treated fairly. But if you, for your own credibility as a government official, you should probably live up to your word. Or the next guy says, I don't trust you, I'm not going to cooperate.
Yeah.
So, but I go to prison, and then I end up, they asked me to write an ethics and fraud course, because all mortgage brokers at this point, the economy's collapsed. This is 2009.
Okay.
Economy's in free fall. And the Dodd-Frank Act had been passed, and they wanted all loan officers and mortgage brokers have to take 9 hours of continuing education every year, and like 4 hours is on ethics and fraud. So
who better than you?
Right. So the government and this company come and they ask me to do this. We say, well, will you reduce the sentence for it? And they say, yes, of course. Well, you said that before. No, this is different.
Yeah.
So,
let me get that shit in writing.
Right. Yeah. That's if you, and that's, everybody says that. And you say, well, I want that in writing, guaranteed. And they go, no.
Really?
They go, no, once you've done it, we'll consider it. And what are you going to say? Oh, go fuck yourself. Well, great. Do that 26 years.
Yeah.
And then suddenly that gangster, I want it in writing becomes, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I do that. So now I've done an ethics and fraud course. I also wrote a red flags rules course for loan officers. I also wrote, so I was interviewed twice by 2 different companies. So you can, two different production companies for Dateline and American Greed.
Okay.
They've all aired. All of this and I cooperated. I did go in and I met with the FBI for like 4 days and the Secret Service for like 3 days. I buried everybody I knew. The problem was everybody I knew had already buried me.
Right.
You know, so
you were late to the table.
Right. It was a bad idea. Like I should have stayed. I should have stayed in Tampa and cooperated. I probably would have gotten a few years.
Right.
But I didn't. I still thought I was going to be a gangster, go on the run, live out my life. And I wasn't going to cooperate against anybody. Like, what an idiot. If I'd stayed there and cut everybody's throat, that all had cut my throat.
Right.
Then I probably would have gotten 5 years. I could have gotten the drug program, got a year off, got halfway house. I'd have been done in like 2 years.
Were you on anything, any type of drugs or anything like that?
You know, like it's funny. The distinction is comical to me because some people I don't think would think it's a distinction. Is I used to take Xanax and I was on Paxil, which is an anti-anxiety drug,
yep.
But they were prescribed by the doctor. So to me, it's like, I'm not a drug addict.
Right.
You know, I don't, and honestly, I did not take the Xanax that often. I mean, probably took it more. I took it several times a week, but it probably, you know, it's not like I was taking 3 pills a day or something.
Right.
Because honestly, the stress of the whole thing didn't feel like it bothered me. You know, I did have panic attacks periodically, but like everybody's like, weren't you worried? Weren't you concerned? I really wasn't. You know, I really just was so arrogant and cocky that I felt like I got it under control.
So you're basically just living it day by day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not sure exactly how that day by day. I mean, it's not like I'm trying to just get through the day.
Right.
I'm not concerned.
Okay.
I'm not worried about someone following me. I mean, I don't feel like it's day by. I feel like I'm going to be out forever. Like, I don't think the cops are coming at all. Like, I'm good. Like, I'm not, and I've said this before. I'm not a guy who's driving around in a stolen car with a broken taillight and a body in the trunk.
Right.
You know, the cops pull me over and boom, I pull right over. Absolutely. Here's my driver's license. It's valid. The car is in the name of that person. Want full coverage insurance.
Like you said, pocket link.
Right. I got everything. Like, you can run this thing back and forth. You can search the car. You're not going to, unless you fingerprint me, you're not going to find anything that doesn't say that I am Joseph Carter. So, you know, I got matter of fact, you search the car, you might come across my passport in the back. Like, there's nothing, everything just revalidates it. So, listen, I actually got so many tickets as a guy one time. I had to go to driving school so he didn't lose his license. I mean, like, I'm driving like a maniac. If you're not worried about points,
right, you drive like a fucking, like a nut, right? Like, I'm going 90, 95. The cops pull me over. I'm not trying to get out of the ticket. They're like, you know how fast you're going? I'm like, I don't know. It depends on how long you've been behind me. I got up to 90 at one point, and they're looking at you like, I clocked you at 80. Okay, well, then it's 80. What are we doing here? You know, write that puppy up. I'm not even trying. Really?
Yeah. And they're, it's so, because the money's not the issue. It's not like, oh, it's a $400 ticket. Oh, no. What will I do? You know, well, you're going to have to go to driving school. Like, I don't have fucking time. Fraud's not a full-time job, bro. I got nothing but time. I'm doing rock climbing. We're jumping out of airplanes. We're going on vacations. Like, I'm doing everything I can. When you don't have a job, you're bored as hell.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So what happened is, we're going to Australia. I get arrested. I end up going to prison, did cooperate, but none of that cooperation led to anybody getting arrested.
Really?
Nah. So all those people that I cooperated, I don't know what it was. probably 20 people that I mentioned, this person, this, that, like, and they had it down. Like this one FBI agent, like she knew who everybody was. She knew everything about them. And, you know, but it didn't, but by the time I cooperated, she'd been transferred to the terrorist task force, and they had a new guy coming in.
Okay.
And he was kind of waiting to be transferred somewhere else too. So he's dragging his feet. So nobody is really working on this case. Now, by the time another agent, I'm in prison. 3 years later, another agent comes along and she comes in and she starts investigating. But by the time she ends up going to the U.S. attorney and saying, here's the case, I want to arrest this group of people, he says, man, those things are 5 years old. Like we got banks with $200 million that are collapsing. This bank over here is a $2 trillion fraud. You know, because the economy is collapsing. It's 2009, 2010. He's like, those are 5, 6, 7 years old. I'm not interested in that anymore. Yeah, just close the case. Well, okay, what about me?
Yeah,
I cooperated. You chose not to do that. And what you would think, well, they would say, okay, well, we'll still give you the cooperation. It's not your fault. No, what they do is they say, yeah, I mean, sorry about that. Well, wait a minute. I cooperated because I knew I was giving you a solid case. You dropped the ball. I only took the 26 years and you didn't go to prison because you were going to investigate and arrest these people. Yeah, we didn't promise that. We tried, it didn't work out. Like, that's really the response. And you're like, well, what about me? They're like, I know.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, they're fucking pricks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I had done all this other things. And so what we did was I ended up filing a 2255.
Okay.
And they fought it. And, I didn't do the 2255. A friend, a guy named Frank Amadeo did the 2255. And, he's a disbarred lawyer who's in prison was in prison for 22 years. And he's got issues, major issues. He's a rapid cycling bipolar with features of schizophrenia. So don't
you have a podcast episode on that?
I have like a 10 or 12 hour episode on. No, I think it's maybe 6 hours, but it's massive. And I wrote a book on him only because as many stories as I heard in prison, the one thing I'd never heard in my entire life was a story, anything even fucking close to Frank Amadeo's, which is that since he was a boy, he has believed that God is talking to him. And God has told him he is preordained to be emperor of the world. So he has that's the funny thing too, is even the way I say it, preordained to be emperor of the world. That's how he puts it. Not I'm taking over the world. I'm going to run the world. I'm preordained to be emperor. Who the fuck says emperor? If you out of every title I would pick for myself to run the world, emperor wouldn't be one of them. So and the problem is that as delusional as he is, he's extremely intelligent, which it happens a lot with people with mental illness, right? Like schizophrenics, they're crazy. They hear voices. They're insane. They're delusional. They're usually geniuses too.
Yeah.
They have no way they can't function.
Right.
So Frank is doing legal work. And when he's bipolar, when he's manic is when he hears these delusions, right? Like he's kind of like, it's always in the back of my head, but when he gets manic is when these delusions manifest themselves to where there are moments of clarity that he knows what the course is, the course God has laid out for him is. And then of course, 5 minutes later, 2 minutes later, he's back normal again. He's leveled off and he's okay. Yeah, everything's fine. So, okay, I'm sorry about that outburst. Let's go ahead. And then you just keep on going. And it's like, oh my God, this is the guy doing my legal work. And I had called lawyers on the street and told them, can I force the government to reduce my sentence? And they were like, no, you can't. There's nothing you can do. I'm like, well, can we file this? Can we file a motion for specific performance? Which means you had a contract and they're not performing. And they're like, no, that won't work. And not in the 11th Circuit. If you were in the 5th Circuit, maybe, but you're in the 11th. That's been done. And if you look it up, it's right. It's done. There's nothing you can do. And I came to Frank and I explained the whole thing to Frank. And Frank said, yeah, I'm not going to let him do this. And he actually has a little man-up moment where it's like, I will, when my troops march in Washington. I'm going to burn I remember he said, I'm going to burn the Constitution. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound right. And he goes, and the president will kneel at my feet. And I remember, and he sat there for a second, and I thought, this is the fucking guy I'm asking to do my legal work. And then he stopped for a second. He went, I'm sorry about that. I'm going to need a copy of your transcripts. I'm going to need your sentencing, the sentencing such, yeah, boom, boom, boom. Turk, get me a copy. Everybody's got a nickname. My buddy Turk. He goes, Turk, give me a 2255 form. We're also going to need your indictment. I'm going to need a copy of, and it's like, holy shit. Like went straight into the little general mode. Thomas, we're going to go ahead. We're going to need this. I'll order this. Somebody give me a copy of his docket sheet. He actually had, I used to joke that I would say, Frank, I said, bro, you're running a small law firm out of the prison. And he'd go, it's more of a medium-sized law firm, actually. Because I have 12 people that, I have 12, I have six typists. I have another six.
It's like, what is it? Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption when he was
but he only had a small staff.
Yeah.
Frank's got he's got like almost 20 people working. It's like 12 people on staff. I got another guys that are my associates. He had guys he called his associates, typists, and then he had paralegals, which actually did all the legal research.
Right.
And he would give them an assignment, and 2 days later they'd come back and they'd have printed out a bunch of stuff, and they'd say, here's what I got. And he'd look it up and he'd say, okay. What was amazing too was his mind was so, I can't remember anything, bro. Anything. This guy would say, oh, well, that's Johnson's v. the United States. It's a 2272. We need to file this. We need this. I believe the case number is 17055 out of Wisconsin, out of the 2nd district. And you're like, are you out of your mind? I can't remember my regulation number for the BOP. And it's the only number I have. I don't have a phone. Right. So anyway, we end up fighting. As if I took part in it at all, other than just watching Frank like this. So Frank fought that case and eventually got them to bring me back to court, where the judge resentenced me. And keep in mind, talked to lawyers on the street. They said it can't be done. I actually talked to T.I.'s lawyer. T.I., the rapper that testified. He got a Rule 30, or he got a 5K1. He cooperated again. He's testified in a trial. Actually spoke with his lawyer. He said, absolutely, there's nothing that can be done. Nothing in the 11th Circuit. And he think he was out of Atlanta. And he's like, Matt, I'd love to take your money. Not that I had any money to give him, but I was, faking it just to see if I could get him interested. And then maybe I could go beg some people for some money. And he was like, I'd love to take your money. And if I thought you had a chance, I'd take it. Trust me. He said, no, you don't have the chance. He said, there's so much precedence. It's overwhelming. Frank gets them to bring me back to court and resentences me. I get 7 years off my sentence.
So a guy in prison does
a delusional guy in prison who's a disbarred lawyer. Yeah. So you can imagine. So that's 7 years off my sentence. And then I'm walking, I get back, I've been back a few months, and I'm walking around, and there's an old con man. He's probably 60. He was probably 62, 63 at the time. He had just gotten 19 years. He'd been there about a year or so. His name was Ron Wilson. And he ran a Ponzi scheme for 57. They lost $57 million. They say it's a Ponzi scheme. It was over $100 million, but that's not true. The loss was $57 million. The other part of it was made up gains. You know what I'm saying? Like they say, oh, you've now got this much in your account, this much. The truth is, the $1 million you gave me to invest is gone, and I'm now telling you got $2.5 million, $3 million. So they say if you look it up, it's like, oh, it's $100 million Ponzi scheme, but in fact, it's actually a $57 million loss. So I'm walking around with Ron, and he's cooperating against his co-defendants. So we're cooperating in prison, where snitches get stabbed for cooperating.
Right.
But of course, the thing is, look, most of these guys are either did cooperate or are cooperating, and they're just lying about it.
Okay. So
everybody's a tough guy gangster, but they don't want you to look at their paperwork. So we're walking around, and he keeps saying, oh, yeah, I don't think they're going to give me anything for my cooperation. And I'm like, and of course, he knows I cooperate. I just came back from court.
Right.
So, and I honestly, there were very little pretext with me. Like if I very seldomly ever denied anything. It was like, oh, I'll tell on every one of you motherfuckers. Like, we're not friends, bro. And they're like, oh, is that Cox? I'm like, exactly like that. But of course, at that point, I hadn't gotten my sentence reduced.
Right.
So initially I could joke around, but now my sentence has been produced. So it's not joking around. My sentence has been reduced. So my joking around is now, no, he jokes around about being a rat. He is a rat.
Right.
And so I'm walking around with Wilson, and he's cooperating, and he's afraid that they will not reduce his sentence. The reason he's afraid of that is because he's saying that the government believes that he has hidden Ponzi scheme money. He didn't give him all the Ponzi scheme money. He gave him like 6 or 7 million, but they think I still got Ponzi scheme money, and I don't. I'm like, okay, well, don't worry about it. So we walk around. He mentions it a few times over the course of a month or so. And then one day I go, why do you keep mentioning that? Like,
he's got something.
I go, they would have to prove that. They can't say, well, this is what we believe, because the judge would go, well, it didn't fucking matter what you believe. He didn't. He cooperated. Give him something. So I was like, we'll get Frank to file a 2255. You'll get just like I did. And so he's like, you don't understand. I'm like, well, what is it? And he goes, can I trust you? And I went, probably not. And he kind of chuckled. Same thing.
Yeah.
And he goes, I did hide some money. I went, really? And he goes, yeah. He said, he said, it's not much. My brother has got like 30 grand. My wife's got like 150 grand. He said, but the problem is his wife had found out he was having an affair. So since he went to prison, she knows was having an affair, and now she's extremely vengeful, right? And she wants to destroy him. And so he's like, I'm afraid she's going to walk in and give him that money. And I go, but you said they've already asked if there's any money out there, and everybody's denied it.
Right.
He's like, right. I said, so she'd get charged with obstruction of justice. I said, she's not going to do that.
Yeah.
And he's like, right. He's like, my brother, I think if they just even ask him, he's going to give it to him. He's like, he's very Christian and very this, and he didn't want to take the money to begin with. And so I'm like, okay. And it's funny because the government didn't want to give me anything the first time, I didn't even think for a second I should go call. Maybe I could get something. I actually thought to myself, that's nothing. 150,000. They're not going to give me anything. If I rat this guy out, they're not going to give me anything. So I didn't say anything, which was really stupid on my part. I wasted, I almost missed a huge opportunity. So a month later, I called my attorney because I wanted a copy of my transcripts, because I had written a memoir at that point. By that point, I'd written my memoir, but I'm writing other people's stories too. Okay. So I said, yeah, you never sent me the transcripts. She goes, oh, Matt, I totally forgot. I'm sorry. And she goes, I'll get them to you. She's, so what's going on? I'm like, what's going on? Like, we're not friends. And I'm like, I don't know, nothing. She goes, anything going on in there? I said, no. And then she goes, oh, okay. Well, if anything's happening, let me know. And I didn't even think about it. And then I went, hey, wait a minute. Listen to this. And I told her what happened. And she goes, oh, wow. Hold on. And you can hear. She goes, oh, Ron Wilson? This is a bad guy. Oh, Ponzi scheme? Ponzi schemes are particularly vicious, right? Like, you're taking money from 70-year-olds that $1 million, their life savings, and you piss it away on some vacations and a fucking yacht. It's over. They're gone. They're living on Social Security in their kid's spare bedroom somewhere, right? So she's like, oh, this is a horrible individual. She said, I actually liked him, but not enough to do an extra bunch of time though. Right. So she says, let me look into this. I said, all right. I think nothing of it. A week later, a cop, one of the COs, sorry, we call them cops. One of the prison guards comes up. We also call them COs, but that also doesn't make sense to people on the street. So a guard comes up and goes, Cox, you got to go to SIS, which is this special unit. And I'm like, okay. Didn't think much of that either, because I was doing guys' legal work, or not legal work. I was writing their stories. I'm ordering Freedom of Information Acts on people. So I'm constantly getting stuff in. Okay. And sometimes SIS would intercept it and call me in and say, why did you order a police report and an FBI 302s on this individual? And I'd say, oh, I'm writing a story on them. They, oh, okay, that's cool. I get it. They give it to me because I'd already gotten some guys in Rolling Stone magazine. I'd written several books. Like, everybody knew what I was doing. So they call me in, and this lieutenant says, sit down. And I go, what's going on? I thought, shit, what did I do? And he goes, hold on a second. And he dials a number and he goes, you got to talk to this guy. And I pick up the phone. I'm like, yeah, who's this? And the guy says, this is agent. I want to say his age. His last name was Griffin, whatever. This is Agent Griffin with the Secret Service. I'm the lead agent on Ron Wilson's case. I understand where he's hidden. You know where he's hidden Ponzi scheme money. And I went, oh, I want something in writing.
So, put it on paper, baby.
Yeah,
put it on paper.
He said, well, I'll get you what I can, but I promise you'll get something. I said, nah, you don't have that authority, bro. Like, I've been through this. Like the FBI,
right?
They'll tell you, I'll trust you. Could trust me. No, I can't.
Yeah, as soon as you tell them and hang up that phone, you're fucked.
Oh no, it's not even that. Even if he turned around and went to the prosecution and said, this guy gave us a bunch of great information we used, in the prosecution said, yeah, you know what though? That guy called me an asshole in the newspaper last week. Fuck him. Let him do his time. Yeah, but we used that information to bust a huge ring, and 13 people got arrested, and we saved a hostage.
Right.
And there was terrorism. And he'd be like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. He called me an asshole. Fuck him. Like that. Because he doesn't, I promised him. Well, you don't have the authority to promise him anything. You're an FBI agent.
Right.
And that's the truth. Like that happens over and over again. The FBI and DEA will promise you something they can't do. And most people don't know that. But if you've been in the federal system, you do.
Yeah.
And so I said, yeah, you don't have the authority to do that, bro. Like I said, give me something in writing. So he actually gets me something from the U.S. Attorney's Office saying if Mr. Cox helps recover any money, a significant amount of money, or there are any arrests made, we'll consider that substantial assistance and we'll reduce his sentence. That's how they phrase it so they can get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the best I was going to get. And so I ended up talking to this guy on email on the BOP email system. We end up going back and forth. And he says, so I give him a bunch of information. Eventually he calls in Ron Wilson's wife, and she says, he didn't give me nothing, and leaves. Calls in the brother. So I'm assuming the brother's going to say the same shit. The brother walks in with his attorney and gives them $150,000 in cash.
I thought he had 30.
That's what I thought, right? So then the next day, the wife comes back because obviously the brother-in-law calls the wife and says, I turned over the money. So she's like, oh shit. She comes in, she gives him $350,000 in cash and silver and gold. Because he was a precious metal dealer. So he had all these bullion.
Okay. Yeah.
Gives him like a couple $100,000 there, plus a bunch of cash. He had $500,000. And they re-indict Ron Wilson.
Yeah, well, that little tiny shit just weighed up to.
Right, because and I remember when he told me, I said, I thought you said it was like 100,000. I acted like I can't remember. 100,000. He's like, he said, you just said $500,000. He's like, I didn't know if I could trust you. And I was like, Ron, we're so close. We're kindred spirits. We're both con men.
Right.
So anyway, he gets indicted. He's put back on. What's so funny is my wife's in the next room, and whenever I say all this, like I am not even being vicious about it. When I get vicious about it, she just shakes her head. She's just in disgust. She was going to go to trial, right? She went to prison too. Like a week before her trial, she was going to prison. They gave her the witness list of everybody that was going to testify. Like she's like, it was all my friends. So she took a plea.
Right.
Which probably cost her a couple years.
Yeah.
They were trying to give her like 2 or 3 years and she ended up getting like 5. So, but when I do I cut this dude's throat, she's disgusted. She's disgusted by me. So I know she's in the next room shaking her head. This fucking guy, how'd I end up with this fucking snitch? And he brags about it. What a prick. What a prick. So anyway, what's even funnier about this is I'll tell you this because this will get you some comments. Guys will be like, this bastard. How dare you have this guy on your podcast? I'm never listening to you to your podcasting. I would live that. Guys will listen to my podcast for 2 years. And then for some reason they didn't realize I cooperated. And they're like, I found out you cooperated. I'm unsubscribing. I'm like, oh no, I lost one. So here's what's funny is there are different levels of cooperation.
Okay.
So let's say I get arrested. You're an FBI agent. You arrest me. And I say, listen, I know something. I know about a scam that's going on right now. They're overbilling at my girlfriend's place she works for. They overbill on Medicare or whatever. And you go, okay, you go and you look into it. And sure enough, you end up arresting a couple doctors and somebody and they go to jail. Like I might get 20% off my sentence for that. Right?
Okay.
Maybe 30. Because what did I do? I gave you some information, walked away. It wasn't extremely, it wasn't an extreme amount of effort on my part. Now, what if you say, okay, well, listen, we're going to let you out. We're going to have you wear a wire, and we're going to have you go and find out, and we're going to have you wear a wire, and we're going to have you make a bunch of drug busts in a drug case. Well, you could get hurt. People have guns, people shoot each other. So I'm wearing a wire. Like, what if I had gotten caught? What if, that's not a good thing. Not just that. Now people know I wore a wire. I'm in danger. So that you might get 30, 40%, maybe, right?
Right.
The highest level is people get indicted. They go to trial, and you have to testify. Now I have to go in front of open court. Can't pretend like this didn't happen. The newspaper is going to say, hey, this witness came, he got on the stand, Matt Cox, he pointed to this guy. Like, it's a problem. It's going to be a problem in prison, outside prison. Like, it may really follow you, right? Luckily, I'm a mortgage broker.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not shooting each other.
Right.
So, but they still feel like it's a big deal. So if you did that, you actually testified against someone at a trial, then you're probably going to get 40 to 50% of your time cut, right?
Okay.
So maybe more. So what happens is when Wilson comes to me, I wish I could see my wife's face right now. When Wilson comes to me and he goes, Matt, he's like, I was indicted. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I was indicted. My brother turned in the money. Then my wife turned in the money, and they indicted me for obstruction of justice, lying to a federal agent. Like, they got indicted. And I'm like, okay. He's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know. I'm on the pack out, which means that to be transferred, they're going to move him back. They got to bring him back to court. So I don't know what to do. What do you think I should do? And I go, I think you should go to trial. Because if he goes to trial, they're going to ask me to they're going to ask me to testify against him. And I'm thinking, I can walk out of here, Ron. You do the right thing. You go to trial. Fuck these people. Fuck the U.S. attorney. You go to trial. Don't you puss out, Ron.
You're like that fucking little dude on the shoulders.
Listen, he's like, I don't know. You think? And I go, absolutely. You make them work for this
trial.
Anyway, so he goes back and he takes a plea, and his wife takes a plea, and his brother takes a plea, and the wife basically gets like 6 months probation or something like that, and has to do like 20 hours or 50 hours of community service. Right. The brother gets less. One of them gets like 30 community hours. One gets like 100 community hours. They both get like a 6 month probation. They don't go to jail. And I remember I think I told this to an FBI agent the other day, or somebody the other day. I said they didn't even get a year in jail. I was like, so they're not even felons. And he went, no, they're still felons. And I was like, really? Because in some cases, if you don't get over a year, it's considered a misdemeanor, right? And then he was like, no, that charge alone, they're a felony. I was like, oh, okay,
really?
Not that I feel bad, but they're both in their 60s, and so they're now felons in their 60s. Who cares? No big deal. You're a housewife. You're retired. So, second thing that happens is Ron Wilson gets sentenced. He gets 6 months in prison. So he did have, his original sentence was 19 and a half years at like 61 years old. When I met him, I think he was 62. So, or 63. So when it happened. So you got 19 and a half years at 60 something years old. You're dying in prison.
Right.
He got 19 and a half years, and they gave him an extra 6 months. So it rounded off to an even 20. Like, okay, here's the funny thing. I leave prison when COVID hits. He's been locked up like 7 years, 8 years at this point. They let him out on COVID. He didn't do any of that time. He didn't do. Are
you shitting me?
Got out on COVID, put him on an ankle monitor. He's back at his house. So it's like everything I did didn't harm him in any way.
No.
I got 5 years knocked off my sentence, which, by the way, once again, the government didn't want to give me 5 years. They claimed that we don't have an agreement with Mr. Cox. We don't even know what he's talking about. We didn't even know he was cooperating with the Secret Service. We've never heard this. And then I present the email that the Secret Service agent had forwarded to me from the U.S. attorney, which they didn't know he was going to send me, because it was to him.
So you had that shit in right.
So I have it kind of, and of course they could backpedal. Oh, well, right. Your Honor. And they blatantly lied to the court.
Yeah.
But, the judge was like, look, I mean, you got to give him something, basically. It's a little bit more convoluted. There's more legalese involved, but in essence, he sent them word that you have to do something. And so they came back, they gave me a lawyer. And we negotiated to get me 3 levels off, which ended up at that point being 5 years. So all said and done, I ended up doing I got 12 years off my sentence. I ended up doing 13 years total. Walked out of prison 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I had written like 22, 23 stories, synopses of stories, right?
I'm still blown away that fucking Wilson got out. During COVID.
You kidding me? Listen, here's the thing. I would love to talk to Wilson.
Really?
I would love to talk to him.
Have you reached out?
No, but here's what happened was after everything happened, he did one of two things. First, when he got back to South Carolina, he got his discovery. He sees all the emails between me and the Secret Service, so he loses it. He writes a letter back to his old cellie. His old cellie's walking around saying, Cox fucking got Wilson indicted. So I have to go to him and threaten him. Not like I'm going to hurt him, but
right.
Like if I walk into the lieutenant's office right now and I tell them that you're showing this letter, they're going to ship you to, I think I said, they're going to ship you to FCI Baghdad. Do you understand? They'll just ship you. And I go, now he knows that I've cooperated. Then this is bullshit. This isn't true what I said to him. But I remember I go, they're not going to move me. I go, do you know why they're not going to move me? I go, because I have a hold on me at this facility by the Tampa FBI office. They won't move me. I go, but they'll ship your ass. And I said, didn't she just buy a house down the street? Don't your grandkids come to see you? This guy's like 60 years old. Like, what are you doing? You're walking around like you're a gangster telling everybody you're trying to get me hurt? I said, one more fucking person comes up to me. I'm going to walk in the fucking lieutenant's office and I shit you not. They're going to march down, pick you up, bring you right to the fucking shoe, pack up your shit, and they're going to move you across the country. I said, I don't know when you'll see your fucking wife again. And he was like, oh, I said, is anybody else going to come to me? No, nobody else is going to come to you, bro. I'm sorry. It's done. I said, all right. So that wasn't, but then Wilson gets sentenced.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I'm sitting there waiting for count. So they count you every day, multiple times a day, but there's one stand-up count. It's at 4:00. So I'm standing at 4:00 waiting. 150 guys were standing there. I'm at my cell. It's really not even a cell. It's a cube, but whatever. So I'm standing there and there's a black guy who just got off the bus. He's got like his bus clothes on. He's standing there and he's sitting there. And this is like I said, this is Wilson's been sentenced. Everybody's done. And he's sitting there and he goes, hey. And I go, yeah, what's up? Like, you're supposed to be really quiet, right? It's count because these cops are walking around, 21, 22, 23.
Right.
So if you make a noise and they're like, oh, that fuck said that. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm like, yeah, what's up? And he goes, a guy named Matt Cox? And I went, yeah. And he goes, oh, I need to talk to him. I said, what do you need to talk to him about? And he goes, I got a message from somebody. And I went, really? And I pull out my ID and I go, I'm Matt Cox. And he goes, holy shit. Now, keep in mind, there's 1,800 people to 2,000 people in the compound. There's 30% of them are white guys. Like, it's not that remarkable. It is kind of remarkable.
Right.
There's 150 guys that he would be right across from me. Like, it is kind of remarkable. But, and I was like, I'm Matt Cox. And, and I'm like, what's the message? He goes, Ron Wilson? And I'm thinking, I remember I immediately looked at his fucking hands thinking, the fuck's about to happen?
Right.
And I was like, yeah. And he goes, he gave me a message for you. And I went,
oh, shit.
Okay. He told me to tell you he understands what you did. He would have done the same thing. He's got no hard feelings and he hopes you get as much time off as possible. And I went, I was like, okay. He goes, he also wanted you to know he's at peace and he's found Jesus. Now, keep in mind, that part wasn't as weird because he actually read the Bible all the time. He wasn't like he knew it inside and out the way South Carolinians, know the Bible. Like, you're in the Bible Belt, so you know it really well. You don't have to follow it, but it's a part of your curriculum almost to know it inside out, and especially at his age.
Right.
So, but the fact that he said he found Jesus was odd. So, Yeah, so you know, because the guy was like, I was like, really? And he goes, yeah. And I went, is this going to be a problem? Am I going to have people coming up to me saying that you're saying this? He goes, oh, no, bro. He said, because this guy was locked up with him in South Carolina. He goes, no. He said, let me put it this way. He goes, I forget the time he said, but he said, like, I got 5 years. I've been locked up about a year. He goes, but between you and me, he goes, I ain't going to be here very long. He goes, I'm waiting for something. You know what I mean? I said, no, I know exactly what you're saying. He goes, I know you do.
Oh,
And listen, that dude was gone in a few months.
no shit.
Like, it was almost worth not unpacking. You know, he's gone. So
he just
fast.
stayed in his bus clothes.
Yeah, I'm not even going to go pick up my regulations. You know,
right.
So, yeah, so that was really weird. So I've always joked about when I get off probation, because I'm not off probation yet. I get off in a few months. I've always thought I'm going to call Wilson. Now, the reason I don't want to call him is like, I don't know if that frame of mind stuck, because we were pretty cool. He liked me. So he was the kind of guy that I call him if he's in the right frame of mind, if he's that frame of mind, at least I could call him up and he'd be like, you motherfucker, what are you doing? How's it going? Like, oh yeah. Oh, well, I was so pissed, but well, what happened? I saw you on TV the other day. I'm watching CNN and you're on a commercial. What's happening? You know, it would be that conversation. So I'd like to call him, but I don't want to call him while I'm on probation, because if he could also say, why are you calling me? Hang up the phone, call his probation officer. This guy who's on probation just called me. This is the guy that got me an extra 6 months, got me this. He this motherfucker. And then they call my probation officer. The next thing you know, I get arrested and I'm in front of a federal judge trying to explain, no, I was reaching out to a buddy that you testified against or that you cooperated against.
Well, I'm a podcast host now, and I want him on my fucking show.
I know it sounds weird, but he has an excellent story, and we were friends. You're friends in prison. What are you talking about? You cooperated.
It's crazy because I reach out to people all the time, and it's just one of those things. And I like stories. I want to hear stories, and they're like, I don't have any. I'm like, remember that fucking time? Yeah, well, that's a fucking story,
right?
It's crazy.
Everybody's got, yeah. You know what's funny? I was saying, I've said this to my wife. I've said it to everybody. Like, you could have run $100 million Ponzi scheme for 10 years, have a 1,000 close calls, dozens and dozens of amazing stories involved in that. How you set it up, how you got the money, what you did with the money, close calls from investigators, everything. You could have this phenomenally interesting story. You could have robbed 30 banks, outrun police, done everything. I'll take a guy who's a crackhead, who's been arrested 10 times, and outran the police on foot 7 times, but can tell his story, over a guy who's got an amazing story, but just can't tell it.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter. People think, well, I don't have an amazing story. Well, wait a minute now. Some of my best podcasts are guys that would have tell you I don't have an amazing story, but they're amazing storytellers and they do have a good story. And, you know, so you could listen, Wade. Well, I mean, look, granted, it's a murder investigation, but he takes one event and goes through it step by step. And I'm telling you, bro, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. Because I can't imagine you're arrested for murder. And he genuinely, he's like, I never even thought that I'd done anything wrong. Yeah. This guy attacked me. We're fighting. He's punching me. He's like, we're in my house. He's intoxicated. He's a former Marine. I have a gun on me. My fear is he's going to get the gun at the right opportunity. He said, I had a split second to pull that fucking gun. He's like, because if he had gotten it, he'd have killed me. Jesus. And I shot him. He's like, and I got arrested. You attacked me in my house, you know? So, but like I said, that's just one event that he can tell an amazing story. So some of these guys have great stories. Yeah. People don't realize what I'm trying to say. People don't realize they have great stories. They don't even know it. Yeah,
it's nuts. I mean, I've got crazy stories of my own from growing up with my stepfather. He's passed away many years ago, but I mean, I could tell you some fucked up shit. I can tell you stories of when my mom and I would come home from a vacation and his brother's in our house cooking meth, drying it out in a fucking air conditioner wall unit. Okay. My mom goes to clean in the living room, moves furniture around, fucking AK-47, sawed off shotguns. There's handguns.
Right.
Goes down the basement and there's freaking 50 fucking hefty green trash bags filled with fucking marijuana. Like, I mean, like crazy shit. I mean, it's
your brother Bill has to go.
Yeah, you know, but I mean, and my mom, she's like, let me tell you some other shit. And I'm like, it's like, I remember coming home and seeing certain shit. I'm like, Johnny, don't go upstairs. You're not allowed in your own bedroom. Well, why can't I go in my own fucking room? Bags of weed stuffed under the fucking bed. I mean, but yeah, it's crazy shit. And like, I tell people this and they're like, nah, I'm like, go ask my mom.
Yeah.
She'll tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it. It's crazy shit. I've watched family members go to prison, you know, and I have a cousin. I think his story is phenomenal because he sold dope. He sold drugs. Well, he was running errands for the guy he was working for.
Right.
They get popped. But this is the crazy story. The feds raid the house. Okay. And he's in the house. The feds raid it. They lock him up, but they let him go. He didn't have nothing on him, anything. He had his license and everything like that. Well, they came back and they got him and his dad, my uncle and him were in a car. They pull him over. They take them both downtown. They end up locking my cousin up because the guy that they arrested with him the first night ratted out, said my cousin was the head guy. So it all trickled down.
My cousin is my cousin-in-law, who the first time I ever met him was in prison. He was in prison for running a meth lab that wasn't his. He's like the guy who ran the meth lab got picked up and told them, listen, I can give you, like, here, he was selling meth. I can give you the guy who's running the meth lab, even though it was his meth lab. He's like, that's all he had. And I had been there. He's like, but I'd been there watching him. Like, I hadn't done anything. He's like, no, I had a meth lab, but it was way over and wherever with somebody else. He's like, and so when they grabbed him, he's like he told them, hey, meet me at the lab. He's like, well, I knew where his lab was. He didn't know where mine was. So when he said, hey, can you meet me at the lab? I said, sure. Can you bring some stuff? Absolutely. So I bring him some stuff and meet him at his lab. And the cops grab me with the meth and say, we got you and your lab. He's like, my lab?
Yeah.
And he ended up getting, what did Reese get? 16 years.
Yeah. I think my cousin got 10. He did 8.5.
He actually, you want to hear something funny? He actually got 26 years, 25 years. He actually got like 24, 25 years. My cousin. Listen to this. This is just how it works, by the way. Like, it's funny.
Lay it on me,
it's funny. Like, Wes Watson's not going to tell you this, you know, Big Kirk won't tell you this. You know, they'll say, well, I don't even know how that works. Oh, okay. My cousin he went to go get sentenced. He gets sentenced and he gets 25 years.
Right.
He's been in and out of prison his whole life, by the way, for meth. It's brilliant guy. The guy should be a college professor. He's absolutely brilliant. Can tell you every single thing about World War II, how many tanks were made, the differences in who made them, like how many people died in every battle, the dates of the battle. I mean, it's amazing. He's got a mind that's phenomenal. He should be a college professor. He's a meth addict. So he goes to sentencing. He gets sentenced. Judge gives him 25 years. He comes back. He goes into the holding cell. He's sitting in there with this kid. He said, this kid, he said, he's a white trash, 19, 20-year-old. He said, he's like, he couldn't read. I had to read him like letters from his mom. I was writing letters to his mom for him. He's like, we were in the same unit. He said, and we're sitting there. He said, there's like 8 Mexicans. He said, and all of a sudden the door opens and this Mexican walks in. He said, and the kid like fucking looks like, holy shit. The Mexican walks over, sits down across from the kid and says, he's like, if your name doesn't come off my witness list, I'm going to send people over to 1317 Druid Hills Drive. And that was the kid's mother and where his mother and sister lived. He said, you got 1 week to get your name off that list. And he's like, I don't understand. He's like, I don't want to hear it. He's like, if I don't get a phone call saying your name's not off the list, he said, that's what's going to happen. Do you understand? And my cousin Reese said, I'm sitting there like, I don't hear any of this. And the kid's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I wasn't even going to tell him nothing. I don't even know why my name's on that list. Like, the kid's panicking.
Right.
So my cousin said, we all get in the van. They drop us off at that jail. We go to our different units. The kid comes to my cousin and says, can you help me write this letter to the U.S. attorney? And he's like, what is he like? Just write that I thought about it and I don't want to be on the list and I don't want to testify. And I did it. And so he tells him everything. And of course, my cousin's like, bro, he's not going to do nothing. Like, don't listen to me. He's like, no, you don't understand. My sister's my mom, my sister. I don't want to get them hurt. I don't want. He's like, well, then just tell them this is what happened with the guy. And I don't know. The kid's panicked.
Right.
So he's like, I write the letter. I send it to the U.S. attorney. He said, a week later, I'm transferred to Coleman, Florida, the medium security prison. He gets there. He said, I got there. He said, I had a DUI case that I was fighting in the court. But because I got arrested, nothing happened. But this paperwork was still out and I was supposed to go to court. So one day I'm on the pack out. Like 6 months, a year later, he's on the pack out. I'm sorry, the transfer to be transferred.
Right.
So he said, I pack my shit up. He said, I get on the bus and they bring me back to Hillsborough County. The U.S. Marshals lockup. He said, I'm sitting there and I'm waiting for a lawyer or somebody to come and say, hey, you're here for your DUI case or whatever. And he's like, I'm waiting. So like a couple days go by. Next thing I know, the marshals come up and they go, hey, get in the van. I'm thinking, what's going on? I get in the van. I go, and he said, I go to the federal building. They bring me up to the U.S. attorney's office. They put me in a little room. He said, a U.S. attorney walks in and says, hey, your name is Reese Townsend. He's like, yeah. And he goes, 6 months ago, you were in a holding cell with a kid named, Kevin Johnson, whatever. He's like, yeah, right. He goes, a Mexican guy walked in and sat across from him and had a conversation with him. You were sitting right next to him. He goes, what was said? And he goes, what do you want him to have said? He goes, don't fuck with me. He said, no, okay, here's what he said. He told him what he said. Because, by the way, all the other guys in the room were Spanish and didn't speak English. They couldn't say what he said. And so Reese goes, here's what he told him. Boom, 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 boom. Read off, knew his mom's address. Said his sister lives there. The guy threatened his sister, said they were going to rape his sister. Said all kinds of vile shit.
Right.
He said, in fact, he said, do you remember getting the letter from the kid? And he goes, yeah, he wrote me a letter. He said, no, he didn't. I wrote that letter. He goes, he can't read or write. He said, he barely read or write. He said, I had to write it. I've written letters and read all of his letters to his mom and dad, or his mom, his sister, everything. He said, so yeah, he said, I'm the one that wrote the letter. He said, yeah, I remember what he said. He blah, 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 blah. He said, you can check my handwriting. It's exactly my handwriting. And the guy was like, so now you're crucial. We can prove that's your letter. We just have to get some of your handwriting. Say, no, this is definitely a witness. And he goes, you willing to testify for that? He goes, you going to help? He goes, you willing to testify to that? He goes, you going to help me out? He goes, you're damn right. I'll help you out. And he said, absolutely. He goes, all right. Goes back to the U.S. Marshals holding facility. They put him on a bus. He goes back to Coleman. He said, 6 months later, I'm on the call out again. They put me on a bus. I go all the way back to the U.S. Marshals lockup. He said, one day I go to court. He said, I go up. He's like, I have no idea why I'm here. I haven't heard anything. He said, I walk into a courtroom. There's a few people standing around. He said, I look over. There's the U.S. attorney. As I walk up, he said, a lawyer walks up and says, hi, my name's so-and-so. I'm here to represent you. I'm a federal defense attorney. I understand you understand you're here for a Rule 35. And he's like, for what? And she says, you agreed to testify against, Manuel Hugo. Yeah. Fernandez, Fernandez, Rodriguez. He's like, yeah. He's like, okay. And he looks at the U.S. attorney and he says, no, that's right. Sorry. He goes, okay. He stands there. He said, the judge comes in, walks over, reads, I understand we're here for Rule 35, blah, 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 Reese Townsend, goes through the whole thing, blah, 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 says the whole thing. And then he goes, so he says the whole thing and he says, okay. And blah, 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 blah. Oh, it was a female judge. Cause I remember he said the judge, he said the judge looked at him and knocked off 10 years, right? So he went from, roughly 10 years. So he went from 25 years to 16. So 9 years. So it goes to 16 years and hits the gavel. And she looked at him and she said, Mr. Townsend, she said, I want to let you know, I admire what you did, what you're doing and what you did by stepping up and doing the right thing here. She goes, and you can come back before me as many times as you want. Because I've been trying to go back and see that lady ever since. He told me that story when he was locked up. So he said, yes, ma'am. So she leaves, and he turns around, and he said the U.S. attorney looked at him and said, "I told you I was going to help you out." And he said, "Yes, you did." He said, "All right." He said, "I'll see you." Goes back to Coleman and did his 16 years. We did like 13.
Did they drop that DUI? No.
Never did hear about the DUI. I think they dropped the DUI. Sorry, they dropped the DUI or something.
Christ,
like
man.
he kept thinking, I kept thinking they would bring me back. He's like, eventually you can get things dropped when you're in prison. So he ends up getting filing paperwork and ends up getting it dropped because they're like, oh, this dude's doing 16 years.
Right.
I think losing your license for a year isn't going to be a big deal. But that's what happens sometimes. Sometimes like he shaved off 10 years by sitting next to somebody.
That's crazy, man.
I get so many stories like that. I had a dude that was arrested a whole bunch of times for home invasions. And so when he's robbing drug dealers. But I mean, it's vicious. Like not only is he robbing drug dealers, so you think, oh, okay, they got it coming, right? No, like the baby mama's there, the two kids are there. They tie up the little 7-year-old. They zip tie them.
That's fucked up.
It's a vicious crime. But so he gets arrested. He's supposed to get 25 years. When they arrest him, they search his car and everything. And one of the things he would do when he would go into these guys' houses, right? Like he grabs whatever money they can, the drugs, and usually like, look, if they got guns, anything. So there was this one gun that he got. He was like, I liked it because it had an extended magazine. Like we're talking about a cheap Lorson, like a shitty 380 that could only fires, 9 out of 10 times.
Right.
So, but he had the gun, and they grabbed him, and it was one of the guns that he had, like in his car or in his apartment. I forget which, but they grab it and they tested it. So one day he gets 25 years, and one day they pull the FBI, come and grab him. They pull him out and they go, they've got like the evidence bag. They're like, or a photo of it. And they're like, see this gun? He's like, yeah. Where'd you get it? He's like, why? And he goes, is that your gun, or did you get it from someplace? And he's like, no, man, I got it from someplace I robbed. And he's like, do you remember where? He's like, yeah, I remember where. And he's like, let me explain something. That gun has like 3 murders connected to it.
Oh, that shit ain't mine.
Yeah. He's like, so you need to start talking now, and you better know as much as possible. He said, not only will it get you off, could it possibly get you off on the murder charges? He goes, which we don't really think you did, because we already think we know who did it. But he goes, but the more information you give me, the better off you will be.
Yeah.
And he went, the guy's name was Pookie.
Pookie.
Here's where he lives. Here's what happened. I robbed him at this time. It was in the early October. Boom, boom, boom. He sells blah, blah, blah. I got him for this. The guy that told me about it was this. I think his last name is, I told him everything. And they were like, it doved in perfectly with what they already knew. They had a murder charge on the guy that when they raided the house, after they basically had the murder, they couldn't find the gun. So they never got him. You've got the gun. You can put it together. There's Pookie's prints are still on the gun. Yeah. The whole thing. So they're like, will you testify for that? He's like, yeah, if you're going to reduce my sentence, I'll testify. I don't know fucking Pookie. Fuck him. Murdered bastard. Can't believe that guy. What a jerk. So suddenly he's a saint.
Right.
So they knock. He ended up getting like, he's got like 14 and a half or 50. He got like 15, ended up with 15 years out of like 25. They knocked off because he didn't have to testify. The guy pled guilty. Right. But that's what happens. Like these guys, they're all kind of interconnected, and you don't know so-and-so, and I don't know, and this, and it's so funny too, because like you watch podcasts, like nobody ever tells you this stuff.
No,
they're all gangsters, and I had to keep a shiv with me all the time. I was stabbing people in the yard, and stop it, bro. You were a member of a book club, and you were taking classes on creative writing, and you were in the real estate class, and you worked on compound. I used to see you sweeping up,
Yeah.
It's like, stop. You worked in Unicorn.
It's not what you think it is in some sense.
Right. Yeah. So you're commissary.
So you've been out now almost 5 years now?
4 years. 9 months. I got 3 more months.
Okay.
3 more, because I had 5 years of paper or probation. So
how long after? Okay. So I saw a little something you did yourself, and it was when you got out and you were in the the
Halfway
halfway
House.
house
Yeah.
and whatnot. And when you left that and you were working at the gym and everything, but from there, from the halfway house to your podcast now, how far in between from the halfway house to where you started your podcast?
So there's a guy named Danny Jones who runs well, it used to be called Concrete.
Yeah,
It's now called just Danny Jones.
Yeah.
And I basically, when I was in the halfway house, I knew when I got out, I wanted to do a true crime podcast. Although when I got arrested, YouTube had been out for about a year or so, right?
Mhm.
I'd never been on YouTube. And that was when, like, the first couple of years, like, people are just uploading funny videos. Right. So the word podcast didn't even come into creation until 2009.
Yeah.
So I was arrested in 2006. Like, I don't know what podcast is. I don't know what YouTube is. I don't know what iTunes are. I don't know what any of this. I don't know what any of these Spotify. I've never seen these things. I've never seen an iPhone. So, but by the time I'm leaving, as I'm getting closer to the door, guys are coming up to me and saying, "Listen, when you get out, you got to do a podcast." I go, "What?" And they're like, and then they have to explain it to me because they just came in 2 years ago, but they know me now. They've been reading my stories.
Right.
They've seen me books that I put out. I've got a couple book deals. I was getting advances. Like, my books are on Barnes and Nobles, or in Barnes and Nobles, and I'm locked up in C4.
You actually popped up on my Audible.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you see what I'm saying? So it's like I got, but you have to explain to me what a podcast is. I've never seen one. I don't. I'm like, is it like a radio show? They're like, kind of, but it's on YouTube. On what? Or, well, you can also do them on Spotify. On what? See,
I think YouTube really took it to
is.
the higher level because of the video.
Yes.
So we jumped from just the audio podcast that a lot of platforms still do.
Yeah.
But it's the video now.
Right. Well, a lot of people, like what I do with mine is we just rip the audio and stick it on Spotify. Although, to be honest with you, you can upload your video to Spotify now too.
Yeah, my video, I upload strictly to Spotify and to YouTube.
Right.
The video.
So what happens is I end up contacting Danny because a friend of mine kind of like knows how to get in touch with him. So I get in touch with him. I send him an email. We start talking. He agrees to answer some questions. So he answers all my questions. I talked to him multiple times. I've called him and asked him.
He's got a killer show.
Yeah. Yeah. It's changed like in the last year or so. It's like, it's all conspiracy theories, aliens. Like, he didn't do any true crime because I've called him recently and been like, "Hey, this guy is true crime. He's great." He's like, "Yeah, bro, my guys don't watch it. They just don't do it anymore. Like, my demographics has shifted." So I talked to Danny while I'm in the halfway house. And every time he asked me, "Well, you should come on and do my show. Like, you got a good story." I'm like, I kept blowing him off because I'm like, I'm in the halfway house. I can't do it. So then I get out of the halfway house. And one day, like 2-3 months later, he calls me in like a panic. He's like, "Bro, I haven't had I had 2 guests fall through. I need to put up a show. I need you to come tell your story. I've answered all your questions. You said when you were out of the halfway house." I'm like, shit. So I jump in my car. I drive over there. I walk in. He says, "How long does your story take?" And I went, "Man, I got a 10-minute version. I got a fucking 20-minute version, 45, an hour, 2 hours. What do you want?" He goes, "Give me the 2-hour version." I said, and he goes, I remember he said, he's like, well, he said something. He's like, is it like 2 good hours? Like, it was fucking riveting. And he goes, "Okay, sit down."
It's fucking riveting.
So I did like 2 hours and 15 minutes because they kept asking questions. And it got over 2 million views.
No shit.
Yeah. And probably 2 months later, by the time it probably got 1 million views in the first 3 months. So at roughly 3 months later, I get Patrick Bet David contacts me and says, "Hey, can you come out?" Not him, one of his people. He's a big shot. So he flies me out to, at that point he was in Texas. Now he's in Palm Beach. Or somewhere in Miami, Palm Beach. Anyway, he's in Florida now. So he flies me out. That one gets like 2.1, 2.2 million. Then I go to Soft White Underbelly. That gets 2.2, 2.3 million. Then I go and I do Vlad. Vlad broke it up into pieces, but it got like 2 million views. So, I start doing these podcasts and, just like an idiot, like I didn't start my own podcast. I'm living in someone's spare room. I could barely pay my rent. I'm painting paintings for a living. I don't know how I'm going to survive. I'm doing podcasts for nothing, like an idiot. Not that obviously I should have, those were big platforms, but Danny had told me, start a podcast now, because I have a feeling you're going to get a lot of fucking action off of this. And I didn't, I always say, that was the best piece of advice that I never listened to. So it was probably 6 months to a year. It was a year later before I started the podcast. And by that point, the momentum had faded.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started the podcast, I did for 6 months, it was just me. I put the phone in front of me. I just said, what was happening? Did that for 6 months. And then I was able to save enough money to get out of this chick's spare room that I was staying in. And I got a 1-bedroom apartment, actually put up like a studio in the living room, and started interviewing people and got connected with a guy named Colby. And Colby is like the engineer or editor, whatever you want to call him. And so he started working with me. And so then it started slowly, you know, it didn't blow up. It's like, I have a leg up on most people.
Yeah. I do all my stuff myself.
Right.
I don't have anybody.
Right.
I sit at home on my iPad and I edit everything. I'll go through and I'll cut and paste.
Yeah, but you also weren't removed from technology for 15 years. Like I could do that now.
Well, in a weird way, I'm like old school. Like I didn't get a fucking tablet for tattooing.
Yeah, you fight it.
I did, man. I was like, I'm old school. Pen and paper, pencil, that's it. Hey, old man, when are you going to get a tablet? And I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah.
You know,
I hear you.
No, but I understand where you're coming from.
The anxiety that it produced in me was overwhelming. Like I tried, and then I got to that point where you kind of have a little talk with yourself. You're gonna fucking have to man up and you're just gonna have to figure it out, or you're gonna have to go get a job selling cars,
right?
Because you can't do anything else. Like I'm not allowed to do anything in finance or real estate or any of the things that I'm capable of making a decent living in. I can't do, and I have 5 years of paper. You're done. You're basically go selling cars, and that's it. So I was like, okay, so I start doing the podcast with Colby. Colby's doing the editing. I'm slowly figuring it out too. And then it slowly, like I said, I have a leg up because if I need to get on a platform, I typically can get on it. Right. Because although the algorithm doesn't push my stuff anymore.
Right.
Like it used to be, if I went on Lex Friedman, I'd have 6 million views right now.
Yeah.
Right now it's struggling to get to 1 million. The YouTube algorithm has been like, he's been on a bunch of platforms. Everybody's seen him. It chews you up and it says there's really not enough interest anymore for us to push you. So I have a leg up because there's a ton of stuff out there on me. So I get more subscribers than most. If it was me starting a podcast and nobody knew me, it would take forever. That's a real grind.
It is.
I'm
there.
And I know it is. I mean, I listen, I'm like, that's why if somebody says, hey man, I got 5,000 subscribers and I'm starting out and this, and you look at their stuff and you kind of go, is this person probably going to stick with it? And your story made me seem like he'll probably stick with it because he's not necessarily doing it because he thinks he's going to make $20,000 a month or $10,000 a month.
Right.
He's doing it because he enjoys it and it's already in the tattoo shop and it's already here and it's something that he's incorporating it into his existing lifestyle. So that's how Wade does it. I go to work. I'm not trying to quit my job. I go to work. I interview 1, maybe 2 people. I keep it about an hour. It's simple. It's StreamYard. I upload it. I do a thumbnail. I'm good. Like he's, it's like, hey, this is quick. It's not that hard. So anyway, but I do have, like I said, I have a leg up. So I'm not blowing up like someone like this guy, like Johnny Mitchell, who's got like 1 million subscribers. He's been doing it like a year, or Larry Lawton, who had like a couple million, he had probably 1 million subscribers in the first 6 months. He just blew up. Like I can't imagine everything he was putting up was getting 200, 300,000 views. So, those guys, I had that opportunity. I squandered it. And now it's just a grind now. But in the last year, so I did it for 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. It was probably 2.5 years before it made enough money to pay all of my bills and then some.
Right.
So in the last year, the check that I get in pays all of my bills. And, and I actually cut some of my bills. Like I sold my car because now I don't have to leave the house.
Right.
I just do 4 podcasts a week. I actually like a year and change ago, like a year and a half ago, I doubled down and said I was doing like 1 podcast a week. And I said, look, if we're making this kind of money, if I double down and I do 3 StreamYards, 1 in person, I could pay my bills.
Right.
And so that's what I did. And now it's to the point where we're almost to that point where it's 2 in person. Because, you get big enough, people stop saying, well, I'll just do a remote because you only got 20,000 views or subscribers. You don't have that many views. So I'm not, or you can pay to fly me in. Well, I'm not going to pay to fly you in because I only got 20,000 views.
I kind of started whittling myself away from the videos because I wanted to focus more on the personal one-on-one, sitting here talking with you across from the table. It's more like it's more intimate. It's, you know, I can feel your reaction. I can sense your energy and stuff like that, to where like when you're standing here staring at a screen looking at somebody, it's kind of hard to feel that.
Here's the thing with those, it's a struggle to get the amount of content. If I interview someone on StreamYard, I get an hour and a half. If that guy was in front of me, it's probably close to 3 hours.
Right.
You know, because first of all, you can take a break, you can goof around, you have more, there's more interpersonal relation there. And it's easier to talk to somebody that you don't have that filter in between you.
Exactly. So, and I like that. But I mean, there are a few I've done through StreamYard and another platform I was using, but for some odd reason, I'm not digging it. And
so here, I'm sorry, I was going to say the reason I like StreamYard. Now, I mean, obviously I would rather have you in person.
Right.
Here's the thing is that StreamYard is all profit.
Yes.
You know, so that's why when the guys are like, hey, can you fly me in? Well, let's think about that. It's $400 to fly you in. It's $200 to put you in a hotel. It's $100 in Ubers to get you back and forth from so I'm at $700, and your video might get 50,000 views. It might get 10. And even if it gets 50, I might make $600, maybe $700. So I might break even.
Right.
The likelihood that you're going to get over 100,000 views and I'm going to make $1,200 it's very unlikely. Most likely it gets 50 and I make $600 at most. And I've spent $700 on you. With StreamYard, if it gets 20,000 views and I make $250, it's all profit.
Yeah.
So it's also 3 of those a week.
I like StreamYard. Yeah. I like using their.
Obviously, I'd rather be in person.
Yeah.
It's just a better video. It's just better. And there's better chance, because let's face it, there's just a better chance you're going to get a longer video, and there's people watch them. They just watch more.
Yeah.
You're going to get 3 times as many views.
Speaking of watching, so I'm watching I forget what episode I was, but I had your Patreon.
Right.
Stay greedy, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, I was fucking dying.
I didn't even think of that.
I was just like, holy shit. My wife says, what are you laughing at? And I'm like, nothing.
You know, it's the Dos Equis guy. Yeah. So the only reason I did that was when I did that, the first one, Concrete, there were so many guys saying, bro, this guy should be the next Dos Equis guy. He is the most interesting man in the world. And guys, it wasn't one. I mean, we're talking about, there had to be 20 people were like, bro, am I wrong? Or is this guy one of the most interesting people alive? Or, you know, they were going on and on. So at some point I have a buddy who's actually a loan officer who said, and I was talking to him about Patreon. He goes, do you know what you should do? And I go, well, he said, you should redo the Dos Equis ads for your Patreon. But don't say the Dos Equis thing. Change it so that it's like law enforcement, you know, interviews him all the time, not because they believe he's involved in a crime, because they find him fascinating, you know, or his smile is so infectious. Vaccines have been created for it. You know, there's so many. If you pulled his credit, it would say approved. You know, right? We sat down and did 20 of them. All of them, and then he said, and instead of saying stay thirsty, stay greedy, my friends. And I was
fucking dying.
I said, that's fucking beautiful.
And Jess is in it with you.
Oh no, yeah. I have other ones. No, you're right. We do have a whole series with Jess in it.
I think she had a red dress on.
Yes, yeah, we have some.
That's the one. And you're like
smoking a cigar. Yeah. I don't even smoke a cigar, and I've got the cigar. You know whose cigar that was?
Who's that?
Larry Lawton. He has a cigar line. He gave us the cigar. So I cut one open and used the cigar. I have some where it's just me, and I have some where it's me and Jess. Because first I made like 4 of them. And by the way, the guy who does the voice sounds just like the Dos Equis. Not the Dos Equis guy, but the narrator for the Dos Equis guy. Now you could just use like AI generated voice, but I had to actually find a guy, and he's great. The guy that I wrote it to, he gave me a discount. He's like, brother, this is so fucking funny.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a great Patreon ad, man. I fucking love it, dude.
And I stopped putting him in there because people were complaining. They're like, you have so many commercials already for you to then go ahead and peddle your little Patreon. Actually, I think Colby does throw it in every once in a while at the very end. So they are hilarious. You know, I probably have 12 of them actually done, 12 different versions.
Really?
They're hilarious.
And it's all the same style. The whole
all of them. It's all the Dos Equis with the thing, and then all of a sudden I'm like, you know, I don't typically commit crimes, but when I do, it's bank fraud.
That's the best one.
Then it jumps back, and then at the end I say, "Stay greedy, my friends.
Stay greedy, my friends." Oh man, that's just hilarious.
I'll do an amazing video that I think I'll meet some guy and I'm like, this guy was hilarious. It was amazing. This guy's got a great story. He tells his story great, and it gets 8,000 views. And then I'll have some other guy that I'm like, this guy, you know, it's dragging. I'm not interested. And it's, you know, it was okay. And it'll get 200,000 views. And I'm like, I have no idea what triggers YouTube's algorithm to push your stuff.
I don't know, man. I have issues with it. I'm fairly new at all this. I've been looking at it, trying to study it. I tell you, you know who's got this shit down? Julian Dory.
Oh, that's funny you just said that. I was thinking as soon as he says the guy, I'm going to tell him about Julian. Julian's
got this shit on lockdown, man.
Julian has a leg up. Julian probably took, you know, 300 hours of like statistical analysis in college. He worked for like a big time New York firm. So to compare some guy sitting in, you know, Tampa, Florida, you know, who's got a degree in fine arts to Julian, like I can't compete with Julian. I call Julian, here's what's going on. He's like, okay. And he takes it so serious too.
I've watched your episode with him, man. It's hilarious. It's a good episode. But yeah, he's got this shit on lockdown. I'm blown away by just his approach to his clips.
Yeah, the shorts. The shorts.
It's like watching a little mini fucking movie.
Listen, bro. And what's so funny so I flew up there and I stayed overnight, and probably for 4 or 5 hours I just talked to him about shorts and watched him and did some, and for a guy who seems like he's always haha and laughing and kind of smiling and listen, you want to talk about serious. He's like, okay, so do this. And listen to me. Are you listening? And I'm like, I'm listening, bro. And he's like, never do a cut from, he's never do one longer than 3 seconds. Do you understand me? I'm like, yeah, I get it. Do you understand me? I'm like, what is in boot camp? Like, he's so serious about it. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, in your B-roll, he's always pull from existing movies. And I went, well, you know, I have Envato and they've got B-roll. And it's like, and it's free. He's like, Envato? He's like just disgusted with me. Like, I'm just like, you savage. Yeah. He's like, you pull from movies because B-roll on Envato looks like B-roll. His movies look like movie. He's just disgusted by me. The fact that I mean, so serious. But he also has shorts that have 45 million views.
Yep. It's mind blowing. I watch him, I study him. I've reached out to him once or twice. And just to have him come on the podcast. I love to sit down and listen to his story from where he started and how he got there. And I know he's told that story probably a million times, like you've told yours.
Listen, I tell his story better than he tells it. I told him his story. We went to dinner and I told him, I said, you know, you've got a great story. He goes, what do you mean? I said, I love telling your story. He goes, well, you don't even know my story. And I go, yeah, I do. I said, well, I probably don't have it exactly perfect, but I'm pretty close. And I said, you want to hear it? And he goes, yeah, let me hear it. So I tell him the whole story. And as I'm telling, he's like, well, yeah, that is right. He said, but the girlfriend, like, we weren't going to get married. We've been dating about 6 months and I knew it wasn't going to last. When I broke up with her, he's like, that's a little different, but I mean, I had it pretty close, but when I was done, he's like, man, he's like, you really he said, you make it sound like epic. And I'm like, I think it was epic. I think it is epic. And, because he had worked his whole life to get this job, to do all this stuff. He then is he's being offered the position that he wants, a position of a lifetime, and goes to his parents and says, yeah, I'm not going to take that job. I want to move back in my spare room.
Well, COVID hit too, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, he just cut and run. He just was like, I can't do this anymore. I want to start a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I want to move back in my spare room, in my old room, and I want to use the guest room, turn it into a YouTube studio, and I want to start a podcast. And I mean, his dad is like, you out of your fucking mind? Like, working your whole life, like, to do this. And this is, you're gonna switch gears. He's like, yep. And of course, and then it turned out huge. Like he's making great money. He's doing great videos. He's doing great, I'm not thrilled with his setup, but still, other than that, like I can't knock it. But he's got the big cluttered room with stuff. Like I did that a little here and there, and then then finally I went with, you know what, bro, don't have anything, just strip everything down, just you and the guest, and that's it. I've
seen your videos. It looks good though.
Yeah, the more recent ones do. Like the old ones, I had paintings on the wall.
I did see those.
I had stuff in the background, and then I got to the point where it's like,
speaking of paintings on the wall, I watched an episode with you, and it was, you were nervous about being shadow banned because you had some Trump.
I had some Trump paintings up.
Yeah,
and I put up some Trump paintings, and these guys were giving me. And people give me crap about it.
Right.
And then I even had Jessica. Oh man, what's her last name? Jessica. Hold on. What? Kent. Jessica Kent. Jessica Kent on. And when she walked in and looked at the Trump painting, she was like, "Can you take the Trump painting down?" Because I only had one at that time.
Really?
And I said, of course, absolutely. And I took it down. I'm not going to get into a pissing contest. Like I'm not going to die on this hill. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got Jessica Kent here. She's going to do a thing. There are certain people, like, whether they're going to bring views or not.
Right.
For instance, I had Johnny Mitchell on the other day. Now, whether Johnny Mitchell's going to bring 200,000 views or he's going to bring 12,000, I don't care. At this point, he's a staple, whether you like him or not, he's a staple in kind of the true crime genre, kind of the community, right?
Right.
So it's Larry Lawton. We drove to where Larry Lawton is, and I was interviewed by Larry Lawton. Like, whether it brings me a dime, it doesn't matter. It's like, it's Larry Lawton. Everybody knows in this genre knows who Larry Lawton is. Like, and he's saying he wants to interview you. Of course I'm going to fucking go.
This is the Larry Lawton who's like, I don't interview snitches.
He doesn't interview snitches. He doesn't even do. And it's so funny because I kept waiting. I waited for him to say, and when he got there, it's like, Matt this, but, and he did what he did, but he did his time. And I thought, and that was it. He skated right over it. I was like, that's it. No, we're not going to have an argument. Like, we're not going to at least have a discussion where you're disappointed in me.
God.
So
that's crazy. But yeah, I watched that, and I'm not gonna lie, I was fucking dying. I was just like,
I did, Michael Franzese.
Yes.
I flew out there last week when I went to LA last week, and I flew out to do his podcast.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. And it's funny. People were like, well, does he pay for the flight? Bro, I'm not going to ask. I was interviewed by Lex Freeman, and guys were like, so, well, what, did he fly you out? I'm not asking him if he's going to reimburse my Uber. It's Lex Friedman.
Yeah.
What am I? It's like saying Joe Rogan, well, you got to pay for my flight. You out of your fucking mind? No. The benefit for doing that is so overwhelming that you'd be a fool. And like I said, there's some people you just want to be interviewed.
Exactly.
Or interview.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing is, I reach out to people. I have friends who are like, well, how are you getting these guests? Honestly, I reach out to them and I try and be myself. Like, what I sent you is who I am.
Right.
And if you respond back, then we communicate, and I felt a connection. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I'm ready, and I want to sit down. Well, I want to talk to you.
You also didn't bullshit. You weren't like, oh, I get 3 million views. This, I get this. You're like, hey, bro, I just started a channel. I got this, I got that. I've watched your stuff. I think you'd be great on it. That's really my pitch. And okay, well, that's a solid pitch. That's better than the guy who bullshits you.
Yeah.
Wade, what is it? He's got his little nickname is Hollywood Wade, but his name is Wade Williams, and he's got a channel called Crime and Entertainment. And
I haven't seen that one.
So he started off where it was mostly mob stuff.
Okay.
I think he's probably got 10,000 subs, right? I talk to him all the time. Like I like Wade. I text him all the time. We text each other. I probably text him every day.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes of course it's all day long, but you know, and he'll send me a short that he did. What do you think I should do with this? What do you do? But I went on his podcast and it was the same thing. It was like, bro, I just got monetized. Would you come on my podcast? I only have about 20 videos up. I mostly do that. You know, he said, I reached out to you. You said, okay. Here's the cool thing about Wade. What Wade was going through at that time, he never told me. He was actually had been arrested and was charged with murder.
What? Had
gotten himself out on bond and hired the best attorney in that little tiny town he's in South Carolina. And what had happened in a nutshell is he and his wife were married. They separated.
Okay.
His wife, they started seeing other people. His wife started seeing this other guy. Well, a year later, his wife was, you know, they were still talking. They have kids. Mm-hmm. So a year later, they end up, you know, they're still kind of communicating. And basically they get together and they say, look, I'm not interested in these chicks. She's not interested in, you know, let's just make this work. So they get back together. Well, just before he's about to move back in, you've got to tell this guy, kick rock. So she goes to the guy and says, look, you know, I'm sorry, it's not going to work. I'm going to get back with my husband.
Yeah.
And the guy he's hurt. Like, it's not like he's a dick. He's hurt. He's like, he's in love. And she's like, it's not going to work. So the guy's upset. And he's actually telling people, mutual friends, like, I'm going to kill this guy. But, and he's an ex-Marine. And so Wade was like, I wasn't concerned because guys talk.
Right.
You know, she told him it is what it is. He's drunk. He makes mouths off. People do that. That's fine. Well, at some point he's at a friend's house and his friend calls him, a mutual friend's house, calls Wade and says, Wade, would you mind coming over? You know, the guy's here. He's upset. We've been drinking. He just wants to ask you some questions. Wade goes, I get that. You know, it's the basic question.
Yeah.
How long was it? Were you seeing her again? Was it ever real? Did she ever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he's like, look, I get it. I'm trying to give the guy closure. I go over there. Like, Wade's a very good guy. He's not fuck him. It's none of that. You know, it's not a macho shit. He goes over there, has a conversation with the guy, and they talk for a few hours. Well, at some point they end up going back to Wade's house because Wade's going to like drop him off, and they stop by the house, use the bathroom, whatever. The guy, he can't, he's not, you know, they're both been drinking. They go in the house and Wade has a concealed weapons permit and he's had his weapon on him. He's like, I didn't know. He said it was a great conversation though. It was good. Mm-hmm. Came back, talked to the house for 30 minutes or whatever. He said, I mean, the guy actually hugged me several times. He's like, you're a good guy. Like, I'm sorry. You know, said this, said that. Well, at some point the guy, he said, he was like, look, I'm going to go take a piss and I'm going to come back. He said, then you just drop me off at home. Whatever the conversation was. Wade's in the kitchen. Okay, cool. Guy leaves, goes to the bathroom. He said, I'm telling you, he said, came back 5 minutes later, walked in, looked at me and just attacked me.
No shit.
Like, I don't know what happened. He went into the bathroom and just
lost his shit.
Yeah. Made himself up. You know, you can do that.
Yeah.
People do that. They start talking to themselves. The next thing you know, they get themselves upset and they're ready to kill somebody. So comes in, attacks Wade. They get into a fight, you know, a real fight. And at some point while they're fighting, Wade's telling him, bro, if you keep this up, I'm going to kill you. He's like, I've got, you know, and he's got his gun. Like, he's concerned this guy's going to get my gun. The guy knows I have my gun. Ends up pushing him back. Guy comes at him, pushes him back in, and Wade pulls his gun and fucking executes him, shoots him 3 times. So calls the police immediately. The guy's laying on the ground. He's bleeding. He's still alive. You got to get here. They come. He's dead by the time they get there. And a couple days later, the cops arrest him. And he's like, he's in my house. He attacked me. They're like, we don't see any signs of attack. They write up a forensic report where they say it seems like he came in and just Wade executed him. Now, Wade luckily got his own forensic forensic, whatever, whatever those guys are, came in, looked at the scene, did his own scene. And the police were so skewed. Like, Wade has a bruise on his head. He's got scratching. They're like, oh, there was no signs on him. They was, you know, you can see that the cabinets are askew. The cups are knocked over. There's water on the ground. Like, it's clearly there's been a ruckus. They were like, there was nothing out of place. So everything about theirs was tainted towards he's done something wrong. Wade's guy came in, took the actual body footage or camera footage off of the police officers and was like, this is knocked over. That's knocked over. That's water. Like, why isn't any of this in your report? And then all the photos the cops had disappeared. We can't find him. So the bottom line is Wade, they fought it for, I think, 2 years. And while that's happening, he started a YouTube channel. He's like, just for my own sanity, to do something. Like, I'm going to work, you come home. He's like, I can't stop thinking I'm going to be arrested in a minute, again, because he's out on bond. Well, eventually a new district attorney comes in. His lawyer goes and shows him everything. It's called, you do like a white paper, you write it up and you show him everything that's happened. And the guy comes back and says, okay, we're dropping the case. Now keep in mind, it still costs Wade $100,000 for the lawyer.
Of course.
That money's gone. So, but when it was clear, Wade contacted me. He's like, do you remember me? You did my video about a year ago. You did a podcast with me. I was like, yeah. Oh yeah. And I remembered, yeah, it was a little tiny channel. No big deal. And I was like, yeah. And he said, I remember thinking you were the first guy he said, this is him saying it. You're the first big time guy that actually took me seriously and did my program. And I was like, okay. He said, I remember thinking, if I ever get out of this, I'm going to go to this guy because I want to tell my story. And I was going to go to you first. And he told me the story, 5-minute version, like I said. And I was like, how long will it take you to tell that story? He is probably, if I tell you all the things that happened and how fucked up their investigation was and everything, and the whole thing on what happened with the guy, he said, it's probably an hour to 2 hours. He's like, I could do a short version, but it usually takes an hour and a half at least.
You want that long version? Oh,
of course I do. I want that long. I said, bro, give me the 2-hour version. And he said, I'll come do it in person. I think it's like 100,000. It's close to 100,000 views, 2 hours and change. I got him on Concrete.
Oh, nice.
He just did. There's some place in LA, Cinnabon or Cinemax, or there's some true crime place.
Okay.
He did that. He's done a bunch of some big. Oh, he did Johnny Mitchell. I think he's got a couple 100,000 on that.
So he was on Danny's.
He's done. He takes that one event, and I'm telling you, for 2 hours, fucking riveting. The whole thing. He's a great storyteller. It's like the difference between a great storyteller. Like, you can take one event, and it's a mini series.
He's like a Matt Cox.
It's amazing. Yeah, but I've got tons to pull from.
Yeah.
And then I've met other guys that are have phenomenal stories, and they can't tell their stories, and it's just.
You ever sit down with anybody that you've done? You don't have to drop any names or anything, and they're telling you their story, and you're like, this is all bullshit too.
I mean, I've had guys that I definitely thought, like, this doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. There's little things on, there's a guy that he's got a story where he explains that he went to a pin, and I'm telling you, there is no way you went to, like, oh, I went to a level 4 yard or a level 3 yard. It's like, stop it, bro. You've never been arrested. You have a non-violent marijuana crime. You did not go to a pin. You're non-violent, no weapons, no nothing, never been arrested, no violence. You didn't go to, well, I got into so many fights that. Stop it, bro. Stop it. Stop. I don't care if you got into a fight every single day you were locked up for the year in county jail. You didn't go to a
pen.
Yeah, pen. You didn't do it. Okay. So, but it's like, what do you do? Well, there's all kinds of guys like, but that's what guys do, And I think here's what happens sometimes. Yeah, there are lots of, what I think happens is this. Sorry. What I think happens is that you go to prison and you've been surrounded by such amazing content and amazing stories. Even if you think I've got a pretty good story, in your mind, it's like, it's not that big of a deal. All these other guys, this guy robbed 30 banks. This guy was kidnapping people. This guy was with the mob for 40 years and made, $20 million. This guy was digging up gold, hiding his money in gold. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like, that's a great story, and tells it well. Like, there's so many guys, you're like, my story's not that great. And you get out and you're like, I want to tell it, but I need to embellish it.
Yeah.
And so they embellish it in a way that, if you want to embellish your story, that's fine. Like, embellish it. I get it. You shouldn't have to. But they tend to embellish it in a way that can be quickly detected.
Okay.
Oh, I went to a level such and such yard and I did 12 years. You did 8 years and you never went to a pin. You know what I'm saying? Like, It's like, and you can find these things out.
Now, most prisons, how many different levels do they run?
State prisons are different. Like the federal, I know the federal system. I can't know 50 prisons and prison systems because every state has its own.
Right.
But let's say in the federal system, you've got camps, which everybody says, they don't have a fence. Some of them do, not all of them, but even if they do, you can jump it. It's not right. It's not like it's motion sensitive or anything. There's no guard tower. So you've got camps. And so you're on those, you're what's called out custody. You're at like a level for your custody levels, like a level 0 or 1 or something. Or I think it can be up to 5 or something. So you got camps, you have low security prisons, you have mediums, and then you have penitentiaries. And pens are usually they'll break them up into like dropout pens. They call them dropout pens, but sometimes it's not even a dropout pen. It's just a guy he's 70 years old. He's got to be in a pen. He's got to die in there, and he's, we can't send him to a medium.
Right.
He's got, but he's no trouble. He doesn't give a shit if he's with a bunch of guys that cooperate. So that's kind of, they call those dropout pens. Or maybe he was a gang member, doesn't want to be a part of a gang anymore.
Gotcha.
So still a dangerous person, but he also can't not be a part of the gang. They'll hurt him. So, and then you have like they call it like ADX or Supermaxes where they always say like, oh, they're completely underground. They basically are partially underground. Like some of them aren't, some of them are just.
And these are these the ones that are locked down 24/7?
Most of them are locked down 24/7, but typically they have like no physical contact. So they're heavily reliant on automation. And, so it's horrific conditions. Even if it's super clean, it's horrific because you never talk to another person. You never see another person. You have very limited contact. It's, that's a rough, like the Unabomber was Ted Kaczynski. He was in one. And, I'm not sure, he's a nut and he's dangerous, but he's not dangerous. And you could have put that guy in probably a low. He was never going to be a problem. He's not making any bombs. Yeah.
I've watched a few of your episodes and I was pretty blown away. I actually, the one with you and Bustamante was a good one. That was a good one.
Yeah. What's great is about interviewing people is all you really have to do is sit there and go, right. And then what happened? Really? I thought that guy was with you. Oh, what were your parents thinking? Did your wife stay with you? Oh, like it's such a, how
it's so cliche.
It is. It's so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun, man. And I enjoy it. But Matt, I just, we're a little over 2 hours, man. I appreciate you coming out here and doing this with me, man. It's a lot of fun to hear your story and to finally, talk to you face to face.
No problem.
It was a fucking blast, man. But, just tell everybody, stay gritty, my friend. Stay gritty. Unbelievable.
Good times.
It's good shit, man.
I need a shirt that says, I have another buddy that said, you need a shirt that says, so many banks, so little time. Right.
That's a good fucking one too, right? Man.
What's so funny is that all the clever things that I say, somebody else came to me and said, bro, it would be good.
Right.
And then I'm like, oh, I'm stealing that. I'm taking it. They're like, take it. It's yours. I bequeath it to you. Like,
but no, that's man. No, that is a good one.
It is.
Yeah.
I guess there's some good ones.
But even your shirts, the shirts that you have made, I've seen,
yeah, I'm actually, we're having them like redesigned because like my whole merch line, I wouldn't wear. Like, that's why I don't ever wear them. I actually have somebody who's kind of redoing the merch line. And so that I can wear the shirts so that if people watch and they see that I have an Inside True Crime shirt on, then they might say, hey, I'd like an Inside True Crime. Like if somebody said right now, like, bro, where can I get your merch? I'd be like, yeah, bro, it's no good.
Yeah.
Don't do it. You're better than that.
Yeah.
and they suck. They're like 100% cotton, which sounds nice.
Right.
But that's not nice. 100% cotton is not nice. It's uncomfortable. It's Florida. You need something with some rayon in it or something. So we're doing a whole, we're trying to fix that. But yeah, I know you were trying to wrap it up. Sorry.
No, man. I'm good, brother. But no, I totally understand where you're coming from on that. Especially down here, it's fucking hot.
Yeah.
And finding good quality shirts that don't make you sweat your balls off.
Yeah.
Is hard to come by because everybody's it's all the same shit everywhere you go. It's all the same shit. But yeah, Matt, thanks so much, man, for coming in. I appreciate it once again. And I'll make sure to have all your links and all that good shit in the descriptions below.
All right.
Cool. Good.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right.